Chapter 78.
If Valentine could have seen the trembling step and agitated countenance of France when he quitted the chamber of M. Noirtier, even she would have been constrained to pity him. Villefort had only just given utterance to a few incoherent sentences, and then retired to his study, where he received about 2 hours afterwards the following letter. After all the disclosures which were made this morning, M. Noirtier de Villefort must see the utter impossibility of any alliance being formed between his family and that of M. France de Pinay. M. de Pinay must say that he is shocked and astonished that M. de Villefort, who appeared to be aware of all the circumstances detailed this morning, should not have anticipated him in this announcement. No one who had seen the magistrate at this moment, so thoroughly unnerved by the recent inauspicious combination of circumstances, would have supposed for an instant that he had anticipated the annoyance, although it certainly never had occurred to him that his father would carry candor, or rather rudeness, so far as to relate such a history. And in justice to Villefort, it must be understood that M. Noirtier, who never cared for the opinion of his son on any subject, had always omitted to explain the affair to Villefort, so that he had all his life entertained the belief that General de Quesnel, or the Baron de Pinay, as he was alternately styled, according as the speaker wished to identify him by his own family name, or by the title which had been conferred on him, fell the victim of assassination, and not that he was killed fairly in a duel. This harsh letter, coming as it did from a man generally so polite and respectful, struck a mortal blow at the pride of Villefort. Hardly had he read the letter when his wife entered. The sudden departure of France, after being summoned by M. Noirtier, had so much astonished everyone that the position of Madame de Villefort, left alone with the notary and the witnesses, became every moment more embarrassing. Determined to bear it no longer, she arose and left the room, saying she would go and make some inquiries into the cause of his sudden disappearance. M. de Villefort's communications on the subject were very limited and concise. He told her, in fact, that an explanation had taken place between M. Noirtier, M. de Pinay, and himself, and that the marriage of Valentine and France would consequently be broken off. This was an awkward and unpleasant thing to have to report to those who were waiting. She therefore contented herself with saying that M. Noirtier, having at the commencement of the discussion been attacked by a sort of apoplectic fit, the affair would necessarily be deferred for some days longer. This news, false as it was following so singularly in the train of the 2 similar misfortunes which had so recently occurred, evidently astonished the auditors, and they retired without a word. During this time, Valentine, at once terrified and happy, after having embraced and thanked the feeble old man for thus breaking with a single blow the chain which she had been accustomed to consider as irrefragable, asked leave to retire to her own room, in order to recover her composure. Noirtier looked the permission which she solicited, but instead of going to her own room, Valentine, having once gained her liberty, entered the gallery, and, opening a small door at the end of it, found herself at once in the garden. In the midst of all the strange events which had crowded one on the other, an indefinable sentiment of dread had taken possession of Valentine's mind. She expected every moment that she should see Morrel appear, pale and trembling, to forbid the signing of the contract, like the Laird of Ravenswood in The Bride of Lammermoor. It was high time for her to make her appearance at the gate, for Maximilian had long awaited her coming. He had half guessed what was going on when he saw France quit the cemetery with M. de Villefort. He followed M. de Pinay, saw him enter, afterwards go out, and then re-enter with Albert and C.H. Torrenaud. He had no longer any doubts as to the nature of the conference. He therefore quickly went to the gate in the clover patch, prepared to hear the result of the proceedings, and very certain that Valentine would hasten to him the first moment she should be set at liberty. He was not mistaken. Peering through the crevices of the wooden partition, he soon discovered the young girl, who cast aside all her usual precautions and walked at once to the barrier. The first glance which Maximilian directed towards her entirely reassured him, and the first words she spoke made his heart bound with delight. "We are saved," said Valentine. "Saved?" repeated Morrel, not being able to conceive such intense happiness. "By whom?" "By my grandfather." "O Morrel, pray love him for all his goodness to us." Morrel swore to love him with all his soul, and at that moment he could safely promise to do so, for he felt as though it were not enough to love him merely as a friend or even as a father. He worshipped him as a god. "But tell me, Valentine, how has it all been effected? What strange means has he used to compass this blessed end?" Valentine was on the point of relating all that had passed, but she suddenly remembered that in doing so she must reveal a terrible secret which concerned others as well as her grandfather, and she said, "At some future time I will tell you all about it. But when will that be?" "When I am your wife." The conversation had now turned upon a topic so pleasing to Morrel that he was ready to accede to anything that Valentine thought fit to propose, and he likewise felt that a piece of intelligence such as he just heard ought to be more than sufficient to content him for one day. However, he would not leave without the promise of seeing Valentine again the next night. Valentine promised all that Morrel required of her, and certainly it was less difficult now for her to believe that she should marry Maximilian than it was an hour ago to assure herself that she should not marry France. During the time occupied by the interview we have just detailed, Madame de Villefort had gone to visit M. Noirtier. The old man looked at her with that stern and forbidding expression with which he was accustomed to receive her. "Sir," said she, "it is superfluous for me to tell you that Valentine's marriage is broken off, since it was here that the affair was concluded." Noirtier's countenance remained immovable. "But one thing I can tell you, of which I do not think you are aware, that is, that I have always been opposed to this marriage, and that the contract was entered into entirely without my consent or approbation." Noirtier regarded his daughter-in-law with the look of a man desiring an explanation. "Now that this marriage, which I know you so much disliked, is done away with, I come to you on an errand which neither M. de Villefort nor Valentine could consistently undertake." Noirtier's eyes demanded the nature of her mission. "I come to entreat you, sir," continued Madame de Villefort, "as the only one who has the right of doing so, inasmuch as I am the only one who will receive no personal benefit from the transaction. I come to entreat you to restore, not your love, for that she has always possessed, but to restore your fortune to your granddaughter." There was a doubtful expression in Noirtier's eyes. He was evidently trying to discover the motive of this proceeding, and he could not succeed in doing so. "May I hope, sir," said Madame de Villefort, "that your intentions accord with my request?" Noirtier made a sign that they did. "In that case, sir," rejoined Madame de Villefort, "I will leave you overwhelmed with gratitude and happiness at your prompt acquiescence to my wishes." She then bowed to M. Noirtier and retired. The next day M. Noirtier sent for the notary. The first will was torn up and a second made, in which he left the whole of his fortune to Valentine, on condition that she should never be separated from him. It was then generally reported that Mademoiselle de Villefort, the heiress of the Marquis and Marchioness of Saint-Emran, had regained the good graces of her grandfather, and that she would ultimately be in possession of an income of 300,000 livres. While all the proceedings relative to the dissolution of the marriage contract were being carried on at the house of M. de Villefort, Monte Cristo had paid his visit to the Count of Morcerf, who, in order to lose no time in responding to M. Danglars' wishes, and at the same time to pay all due deference to his position in society, donned his uniform of lieutenant general, which he ornamented with all his crosses, and thus attired, ordered his finest horses and drove to the Rue de la Chausse-et d'Antin. Danglars was balancing his monthly accounts, and it was perhaps not the most favorable moment for finding him in his best humor. At the first sight of his old friend, Danglars assumed his majestic air and settled himself in his easy chair. Morcerf, usually so stiff and formal, accosted the banker in an affable and smiling manner, and feeling sure that the overture he was about to make would be well received, he did not consider it necessary to adopt any man-overs in order to gain his end, but went at once straight to the point. "Well, Baron," said he, "here I am at last. Some time has elapsed since our plans were formed, and they are not yet executed." Morcerf paused at these words, quietly waiting till the cloud should have dispersed which had gathered on the brow of Danglars and which he attributed to his silence. But on the contrary, to his great surprise, it grew darker and darker. "To what do you allude, monsieur?" said Danglars, as if he were trying in vain to guess at the possible meaning of the General's words. "Ah," said Morcerf, "I see you are a stickler for forms, my dear sir, and you would remind me that the ceremonial rites should not be omitted. Ma foi, I beg your pardon, but as I have but one son, and it is the first time I have ever thought of marrying him, I am still serving my apprenticeship, you know. Come, I will reform." And Morcerf with a forced smile arose, and, making a low bow to him, Danglars said, "Baron, I have the honor of asking of you the hand of Mademoiselle Hugues Danglars for my son, the Vicomte Albert de Morcerf." But Danglars, instead of receiving this address in the favorable manner which Morcerf had expected, knit his brow, and without inviting the Count, who was still standing, to take a seat, he said, "Monsieur, it will be necessary to reflect before I give you an answer." "To reflect?" said Morcerf, more and more astonished. "Have you not had enough time for reflection during the 8 years which have elapsed since this marriage was first discussed between us?" "Count," said the banker, "things are constantly occurring in the world to induce us to lay aside our most established opinions, or at all events to cause us to remodel them according to the change of circumstances, which may have placed affairs in a totally different light to that in which we at first viewed them." "I do not understand you, Baron," said Morcerf. "What I mean to say is this, sir, that during the last fortnight unforeseen circumstances have occurred." "Excuse me," said Morcerf, "but is it a play we are acting?" "A play? Yes, for it is like one. Pray let us come more to the point and endeavor thoroughly to understand each other. That is quite my desire. You have seen M. de Monte Cristo, have you not?" "I see him very often," said Danglars, drawing himself up. "He is a particular friend of mine." "Well, in one of your late conversations with him, you said that I appeared to be forgetful and irresolute concerning this marriage, did you not?" "I did say so." "Well, here I am, proving at once that I am really neither the one nor the other, by entreating you to keep your promise on that score." Danglars did not answer. "Have you so soon changed your mind?" added Morcerf, "or have you only provoked my request that you may have the pleasure of seeing me humbled?" Danglars, seeing that if he continued the conversation in the same tone in which he had begun it, the whole thing might turn out to his own disadvantage, turned to Morcerf, and said, "Count, you must doubtless be surprised at my reserve, and I assure you it costs me much to act in such a manner towards you. But believe me when I say that imperative necessity has imposed the painful task upon me." "These are all so many empty words, my dear sir," said Morcerf. "They might satisfy a new acquaintance, but the Comte de Morcerf does not rank in that list. And when a man like him comes to another, recalls to him his plighted word, and this man fails to redeem the pledge, he has at least a right to exact from him a good reason for so doing." Danglars was a coward, but did not wish to appear so. He was piqued at the tone which Morcerf had just assumed. "I am not without a good reason for my conduct," replied the banker. "What do you mean to say?" "I mean to say that I have a good reason, but that it is difficult to explain. You must be aware, at all events, that it is impossible for me to understand motives before they are explained to me. But one thing at least is clear, which is, that you decline allying yourself with my family." "No, sir," said Danglars. "I merely suspend my decision, that is all. And do you really flatter yourself that I shall yield to all your caprices, and quietly and humbly await the time of again being received into your good graces? Then, Count, if you will not wait, we must look upon these projects as if they had never been entertained." The Count bit his lips till the blood almost started, to prevent the ebullition of anger which his proud and irritable temper scarcely allowed him to restrain. Understanding, however, that in the present state of things the laugh would decidedly be against him, he turned from the door, towards which he had been directing his steps, and again confronted the banker. A cloud settled on his brow, evincing decided anxiety and uneasiness, instead of the expression of offended pride which had lately reigned there. "My dear Danglars," said Morcerf, "we have been acquainted for many years, and consequently we ought to make some allowance for each other's failings. You owe me an explanation, and really it is but fair that I should know what circumstance has occurred to deprive my son of your favor." "It is from no personal ill-feeling towards the Viscount. That is all I can say, sir," replied Danglars, who resumed his insolent manner as soon as he perceived that Morcerf was a little softened and calmed down. "And towards whom do you bear this personal ill-feeling, then?" said Morcerf, turning pale with anger. The expression of the Count's face had not remained unperceived by the banker. He fixed on him a look of greater assurance than before, and said, "You may, perhaps, be better satisfied that I should not go farther into particulars." A tremor of suppressed rage shook the whole frame of the Count, and making a violent effort over himself, he said, "I have a right to insist on your giving me an explanation. Is it Madame de Morcerf who has displeased you? Is it my fortune which you find insufficient? Is it because my opinions differ from yours?" "Nothing of the kind, sir," replied Danglars. "If such had been the case, I only should have been to blame, inasmuch as I was aware of all these things when I made the engagement. No, do not seek any longer to discover the reason. I really am quite ashamed to have been the cause of your undergoing such severe self-examination. Let us drop the subject, and adopt the middle course of delay, which implies neither a rupture nor an engagement. Ma foi, there is no hurry. My daughter is only 17 years old, and your son 21. While we wait, time will be progressing, events will succeed each other. Things which in the evening look dark and obscure appear but too clearly in the light of morning, and sometimes the utterance of one word or the lapse of a single day will reveal the most cruel calumnies." "Calumnies, did you say, sir?" cried Morcerf, turning livid with rage. "Does anyone dare to slander me?" "Monsieur, I told you that I considered it best to avoid all explanation. Then, sir, I am patiently to submit to your refusal." "Yes, sir, although I assure you the refusal is as painful for me to give as it is for you to receive, for I had reckoned on the honor of your alliance, and the breaking off of a marriage contract always injures the lady more than the gentleman." "Enough, sir," said Morcerf, "we will speak no more on the subject," and clutching his gloves in anger, he left the apartment. Danglars observed that during the whole conversation Morcerf had never once dared to ask if it was on his own account that Danglars recalled his word. That evening he had a long conference with several friends, and M. Cavalcanti, who had remained in the drawing-room with the ladies, was the last to leave the banker's house. The next morning, as soon as he awoke, Danglars asked for the newspapers. They were brought to him. He laid aside 3 or 4, and at last fixed on L'Impartial, the paper of which Beauchamp was the chief editor. He hastily tore off the cover, opened the journal with nervous precipitation, passed contemptuously over the Paris jottings, and arriving at the miscellaneous intelligence, stopped with a malicious smile. At a paragraph headed "Very good," observed Danglars, after having read the paragraph, "Here is a little article on Colonel Fernand, which, if I am not mistaken, would render the explanation which the Comte de Morcerf required of me perfectly unnecessary." At the same moment, that is, at 9 o'clock in the morning, Albert de Morcerf, dressed in a black coat buttoned up to his chin, might have been seen walking with a quick and agitated step in the direction of Monte Cristo's house in the Champs Elysees. When he presented himself at the gate, the porter informed him that the Count had gone out about half an hour previously. Did he take Baptistin with him? No, my lord. Call him then, I wish to speak to him. The concierge went to seek the valet de chambre and returned with him in an instant. My good friend, said Albert, I beg pardon for my intrusion, but I was anxious to know from your own mouth if your master was really out or not. He is really out, sir, replied Baptistin. Out even to me. I know how happy my master always is to receive the Vicomte, said Baptistin, and I should therefore never think of including him in any general order. You are right, and now I wish to see him on an affair of great importance. Do you think it will be long before he comes in? No, I think not, for he ordered his breakfast at 10 o'clock. Well, I will go and take a turn in the Champs Elysees, and at 10 o'clock I will return here. Meanwhile, if the Count should come in, will you beg him not to go out again without seeing me? You may depend on my doing so, sir, said Baptistin. Albert left the cab in which he had come at the Count's door, intending to take a turn on foot. As he was passing the All-des Views, he thought he saw the Count's horses standing at Gosset's shooting gallery. He approached, and soon recognized the coachman. Is the Count shooting in the gallery? Said Morcerf. Yes, sir, replied the coachman. While he was speaking, Albert had heard the report of 2 or 3 pistol shots. He entered and on his way met the waiter. Excuse me, my lord, said the lad, but will you have the kindness to wait a moment? What for, Philip? Asked Albert, who, being a constant visitor there, did not understand this opposition to his entrance. Because the person who is now in the gallery prefers being alone, and never practices in the presence of anyone. Not even before you, Philip. Then who loads his pistol? His servant, a Nubian. A Negro it is he then. Do you know this gentleman? Yes, and I am come to look for him. He is a friend of mine. Oh, that is quite another thing then. I will go immediately and inform him of your arrival. And Philip, urged by his own curiosity, entered the gallery. A second afterwards, Monte Cristo appeared on the threshold. I ask your pardon, my dear Count, said Albert, for following you here, and I must first tell you that it was not the fault of your servants that I did so. I alone am to blame for the indiscretion. I went to your house, and they told me you were out, but that they expected you home at 10 o'clock to breakfast. I was walking about in order to pass away the time till 10 o'clock, when I caught sight of your carriage and horses. What you have just said induces me to hope that you intend breakfasting with me. No, thank you. I am thinking of other things besides breakfast just now. Perhaps we may take that meal at a later hour and in worse company. What on earth are you talking of? I am to fight today. For what? For the sake of fighting. Yes, I understand that, but what is the quarrel? People fight for all sorts of reasons, you know. I fight in the cause of honor. Ah, that is something serious. So serious that I come to beg you to render me a service. What is it? To be my second. That is a serious matter, and we will not discuss it here. Let us speak of nothing till we get home. Ali, bring me some water. The Count turned up his sleeves, and passed into the little vestibule where the gentlemen were accustomed to wash their hands after shooting. Come in, my lord, said Philip in a low tone, and I will show you something droll. Morcerf entered, and in place of the usual target, he saw some playing cards fixed against the wall. At a distance, Albert thought it was a complete suit, for he counted from the ace to the 10. Ah-ha, said Albert, I see you were preparing for a game of cards. No, said the Count, I was making a suit. How, said Albert. Those are really aces and 2s which you see, but my shots have turned them into 3s, 5s, 7s, 8s, 9s, and 10s. Albert approached. In fact, the bullets had actually pierced the cards in the exact places which the painted signs would otherwise have occupied, the lines and distances being as regularly kept as if they had been ruled with pencil. In going up to the target, Morcerf picked up 2 or 3 swallows that had been rash enough to come within the range of the Count's pistol. "Diable," said Morcerf. "What would you have, my dear Viscount?" said Monte Cristo, wiping his hands on the towel which Ali had brought him. "I must occupy my leisure moments in some way or other. But come, I am waiting for you." Both men entered Monte Cristo's carriage, which in the course of a few minutes deposited them safely at No. 30. Monte Cristo took Albert into his study, and pointing to a seat, placed another for himself. "Now let us talk the matter over quietly," said the Count. "You see I am perfectly composed," said Albert. "With whom are you going to fight?" "With Beauchamp." "One of your friends, of course. It is always with friends that one fights. I suppose you have some cause of quarrel." "I have." "What has he done to you?" "There appeared in his journal last night, but wait, and read for yourself." And Albert handed over the paper to the Count, who read as follows: "A correspondent at Yanina informs us of a fact of which until now we had remained in ignorance. The castle which formed the protection of the town was given up to the Turks by a French officer named Fernand, in whom the Grand Vizier, Ali Tepelini, had reposed the greatest confidence." "Well," said Monte Cristo, "what do you see in that to annoy you?" "What do I see in it?" "Yes, what does it signify to you if the castle of Yanina was given up by a French officer?" "It signifies to my father, the Count of Morcerf, whose Christian name is Fernand." "Did your father serve under Ali Pasha?" "Yes, that is to say, he fought for the independence of the Greeks, and hence arises the calumny." "Oh, my dear Viscount, do talk reason. I do not desire to do otherwise. Now just tell me who the devil should know in France that the officer Fernand and the Count of Morcerf are one and the same person? And who cares now about Yanina, which was taken as long ago as the year 1822 or 1823? That just shows the meanness of this slander. They have allowed all this time to elapse, and then all of a sudden rake up events which have been forgotten to furnish materials for scandal, in order to tarnish the luster of our high position. I inherit my father's name, and I do not choose that the shadow of disgrace should darken it. I am going to Beauchamp, in whose journal this paragraph appears, and I shall insist on his retracting the assertion before 2 witnesses. Beauchamp will never retract. Then we must fight. No, you will not, for he will tell you, what is very true, that perhaps there were 50 officers in the Greek army bearing the same name. We will fight, nevertheless. I will efface that blot on my father's character. My father, who was such a brave soldier, whose career was so brilliant, well, he will add, we are warranted in believing that this Fernand is not the illustrious Count of Morcerf, who also bears the same Christian name. I am determined not to be content with anything short of an entire retractation. And you intend to make him do it in the presence of 2 witnesses, do you?" "Yes." "You do wrong, which means, I suppose, that you refuse the service which I asked of you. You know my theory regarding duels. I told you my opinion on that subject, if you remember, when we were at Rome. Nevertheless, my dear Count, I found you this morning engaged in an occupation but little consistent with the notions you profess to entertain. Because, my dear fellow, you understand one must never be eccentric. If one's lot is cast among fools, it is necessary to study folly. I shall perhaps find myself one day called out by some harebrained scamp, who has no more real cause of quarrel with me than you have with Beauchamp. He may take me to task for some foolish trifle or other. He will bring his witnesses, or will insult me in some public place, and I am expected to kill him for all that. You admit that you would fight then. Well, if so, why do you object to my doing so? I do not say that you ought not to fight. I only say that a duel is a serious thing, and ought not to be undertaken without due reflection." Did he reflect before he insulted my father? If he spoke hastily and owns that he did so, you ought to be satisfied. Ah, my dear Count, you are far too indulgent. And you are far too exacting. Supposing, for instance, and do not be angry at what I am going to say well, supposing the assertion to be really true. A son ought not to submit to such a stain on his father's honor. Ma foi, we live in times when there is much to which we must submit. That is precisely the fault of the age. And do you undertake to reform it? Yes, as far as I am personally concerned. Well, you are indeed exacting, my dear fellow. Yes, I own it. Are you quite impervious to good advice? Not when it comes from a friend. And do you account me that title? Certainly I do. Well then, before going to Beauchamp with your witnesses, seek further information on the subject. From whom? From Haid E. Why, what can be the use of mixing a woman up in the affair? What can she do in it? She can declare to you, for example, that your father had no hand whatever in the defeat and death of the vizier, or if by chance he had, indeed, the misfortune to I have told you, my dear Count, that I would not for one moment admit of such a proposition. You reject this means of information, then? I do most decidedly. Then let me offer one more word of advice. Do so then, but let it be the last. You do not wish to hear it, perhaps. On the contrary, I request it. Do not take any witnesses with you when you go to Beauchamp. Visit him alone. That would be contrary to all custom. Your case is not an ordinary one. And what is your reason for advising me to go alone? Because then the affair will rest between you and Beauchamp. Explain yourself. I will do so. If Beauchamp be disposed to retract, you ought at least to give him the opportunity of doing it of his own free will. The satisfaction to you will be the same. If, on the contrary, he refuses to do so, it will then be quite time enough to admit two strangers into your secret. They will not be strangers, they will be friends. Ah, but the friends of today are the enemies of tomorrow, Beauchamp, for instance. So I recommend you to be prudent. Then you advise me to go alone to Beauchamp. I do, and I will tell you why. When you wish to obtain some concession from a man's self-love, you must avoid even the appearance of wishing to wound it. I believe you are right. I am glad of it. Then I will go alone. Go, but you would do better still by not going at all. That is impossible. Do so, then. It will be a wiser plan than the first which you proposed. But if, in spite of all my precautions, I am at last obliged to fight, will you not be my second? My dear Viscount, said Monte Cristo gravely, you must have seen before today that at all times and in all places I have been at your disposal, but the service which you have just demanded of me is one which it is out of my power to render you. Why? Perhaps you may know at some future period, and in the meantime I request you to excuse my declining to put you in possession of my reasons. Well, I will have France and Ch. Tournaud. They will be the very men for it. Do so, then. But if I do fight, you will surely not object to giving me a lesson or two in shooting and fencing. That, too, is impossible. What a singular being you are. You will not interfere in anything. You are right, that is the principle on which I wish to act. We will say no more about it then. Goodbye, Count. Morcerf took his hat and left the room. He found his carriage at the door, and doing his utmost to restrain his anger, he went at once to find Beauchamp, who was in his office. It was a gloomy, dusty-looking apartment, such as journalists' offices have always been from time immemorial. The servant announced M. Albert de Morcerf. Beauchamp repeated the name to himself, as though he could scarcely believe that he had heard aright, and then gave orders for him to be admitted. Albert entered. Beauchamp uttered an exclamation of surprise on seeing his friend leap over and trample underfoot all the newspapers which were strewed about the room. This way, my dear Albert," said he, holding out his hand to the young man. "Are you out of your senses, or do you come peaceably to take breakfast with me? Try and find a seat. There is one by that geranium, which is the only thing in the room to remind me that there are other leaves in the world besides leaves of paper." "Beauchamp," said Albert, "it is of your journal that I come to speak." "Indeed, what do you wish to say about it?" "I desire that a statement contained in it should be rectified. To what do you refer? But pray sit down. Thank you, said Albert, with a cold and formal bow. Will you now have the kindness to explain the nature of the statement which has displeased you? An announcement has been made which implicates the honor of a member of my family. What is it? Said Beauchamp, much surprised. Surely you must be mistaken. The story sent you from Yanina. Yanina? Yes. Really you appear to be totally ignorant of the cause which brings me here. Such is really the case, I assure you, upon my honor. Baptiste, give me yesterday's paper, cried Beauchamp. Here, I have brought mine with me, replied Albert. Beauchamp took the paper and read the article to which Albert pointed in an undertone. You see it is a serious annoyance, said Morcerf, when Beauchamp had finished the perusal of the paragraph. Is the officer referred to a relation of yours, then? Demanded the journalist. Yes, said Albert, blushing. Well, what do you wish me to do for you? Said Beauchamp mildly. My dear Beauchamp, I wish you to contradict this statement. Beauchamp looked at Albert with a benevolent expression. Come, said he, this matter will want a good deal of talking over. A retractation is always a serious thing, you know. Sit down and I will read it again. Albert resumed his seat, and Beauchamp read, with more attention than at first, the lines denounced by his friend. Well, said Albert in a determined tone, you see that your paper has insulted a member of my family, and I insist on a retractation being made. You insist? Yes, I insist. Permit me to remind you that you are not in the chamber, my dear Viscount. Nor do I wish to be there, replied the young man, rising. I repeat that I am determined to have the announcement of yesterday contradicted. You have known me long enough, continued Albert, biting his lips convulsively, for he saw that Beauchamp's anger was beginning to rise. You have been my friend, and therefore sufficiently intimate with me to be aware that I am likely to maintain my resolution on this point. If I have been your friend, Morcerf, your present manner of speaking would almost lead me to forget that I ever bore that title. But wait a moment, do not let us get angry, or at least not yet. You are irritated and vexed. Tell me how this Fernand is related to you. He is merely my father, said Albert M. Fernand Mondego, Count of Morcerf, an old soldier who has fought in 20 battles and whose honorable scars they would denounce as badges of disgrace. Is it your father? Said Beauchamp. That is quite another thing. Then I can well understand your indignation, my dear Albert. I will look at it again, and he read the paragraph for the third time, laying a stress on each word as he proceeded. But the paper nowhere identifies this Fernand with your father. No, but the connection will be seen by others, and therefore I will have the article contradicted. At the words I will, Beauchamp steadily raised his eyes to Albert's countenance, and then as gradually lowering them, he remained thoughtful for a few moments. You will retract this assertion, will you not, Beauchamp? Said Albert with increased though stifled anger. Yes, replied Beauchamp. Immediately, said Albert. When I am convinced that the statement is false. What? The thing is worth looking into, and I will take pains to investigate the matter thoroughly. But what is there to investigate, sir? Said Albert, enraged beyond measure at Beauchamp's last remark. If you do not believe that it is my father, say so immediately. And if, on the contrary, you believe it to be him, state your reasons for doing so. Beauchamp looked at Albert with the smile which was so peculiar to him, and which in its numerous modifications served to express every varied emotion of his mind. Sir, replied he, if you came to me with the idea of demanding satisfaction, you should have gone at once to the point, and not have entertained me with the idle conversation to which I have been patiently listening for the last half hour. Am I to put this construction on your visit? Yes, if you will not consent to retract that infamous calumny. Wait a moment, no threats, if you please, M. Fernand Mondego, Vicomte de Morcerf. I never allow them from my enemies, and therefore shall not put up with them from my friends. You insist on my contradicting the article relating to General Fernand, an article with which, I assure you on my word of honor, I had nothing whatever to do. Yes, I insist on it, said Albert, whose mind was beginning to get bewildered with the excitement of his feelings. And if I refuse to retract, you wish to fight, do you? Said Beauchamp in a calm tone. Yes, replied Albert, raising his voice. Well, said Beauchamp, here is my answer, my dear sir. The article was not inserted by me, I was not even aware of it. But you have, by the step you have taken, called my attention to the paragraph in question, and it will remain until it shall be either contradicted or confirmed by someone who has a right to do so. Sir, said Albert, rising, I will do myself the honor of sending my seconds to you, and you will be kind enough to arrange with them the place of meeting and the weapons. Certainly, my dear sir. And this evening, if you please, or tomorrow at the latest, we will meet. No, I will be on the ground at the proper time. But in my opinion, and I have a right to dictate the preliminaries, as it is I who have received the provocation, in my opinion, the time ought not to be yet. I know you to be well skilled in the management of the sword, while I am only moderately so. I know, too, that you are a good marksman. There we are about equal. I know that a duel between us two would be a serious affair, because you are brave, and I am brave also. I do not therefore wish either to kill you, or to be killed myself without a cause. Now, I am going to put a question to you, and one very much to the purpose too. Do you insist on this retractation so far as to kill me if I do not make it, although I have repeated more than once, and affirmed on my honor, that I was ignorant of the thing with which you charge me? And although I still declare that it is impossible for anyone but you to recognize the Count of Morcerf under the name of Fernand, I maintain my original resolution. Very well, my dear sir, then I consent to cut throats with you. But I require 3 weeks' preparation. At the end of that time I shall come and say to you, the assertion is false and I retract it, or the assertion is true, when I shall immediately draw the sword from its sheath, or the pistols from the case, whichever you please. 3 weeks, cried Albert. They will pass as slowly as 3 centuries when I am all the time suffering dishonor. Had you continued to remain on amicable terms with me, I should have said, patience, my friend. But you have constituted yourself my enemy, therefore I say, what does that signify to me, sir? Well, let it be 3 weeks then, said Morcerf. But remember, at the expiration of that time no delay or subterfuge will justify you in M. Albert de Morcerf, said Beauchamp, rising in his turn, I cannot throw you out of window for 3 weeks, that is to say, for 24 days to come, nor have you any right to split my skull open till that time has elapsed. Today is the 29th of August. The 21st of September will, therefore, be the conclusion of the term agreed on. Until that time arrives, and it is the advice of a gentleman which I am about to give you, till then, we will refrain from growling and barking like 2 dogs chained within sight of each other. When he had concluded his speech, Beauchamp bowed coldly to Albert, turned his back upon him, and went to the press-room. Albert vented his anger on a pile of newspapers, which he sent flying all over the office by switching them violently with his stick, after which ebullition he departed not, however, without walking several times to the door of the press-room, as if he had half a mind to enter. While Albert was lashing the front of his carriage in the same manner that he had the newspapers which were the innocent agents of his discomfiture, as he was crossing the barrier he perceived Morel, who was walking with a quick step and a bright eye. He was passing the Chinese baths, and appeared to have come from the direction of the Porte Saint-Martin, and to be going towards the Madeleine. Ah, said Morcerf, there goes a happy man. And it so happened Albert was not mistaken in his opinion.
Chapter 79.
Morel was, in fact, very happy. M. Noirtier had just sent for him, and he was in such haste to know the reason of his doing so that he had not stopped to take a cab, placing infinitely more dependence on his own 2 legs than on the 4 legs of a cab horse. He had therefore set off at a furious rate from the Rue Meslay, and was hastening with rapid strides in the direction of the Faubourg Saint-Honor. Morel advanced with a firm, manly tread, and poor Berrois followed him as he best might. Morel was only 31. Berrois was 60 years of age. Morel was deeply in love, and Berrois was dying with heat and exertion. These two men, thus opposed in age and interests, resembled two parts of a triangle, presenting the extremes of separation, yet nevertheless possessing their point of union. This point of union was Noirtier, and it was he who had just sent for Morel, with the request that the latter would lose no time in coming to him, a command which Morel obeyed to the letter, to the great discomfiture of Berrois. On arriving at the house, Morel was not even out of breath, for love lends wings to our desires. But Berrois, who had long forgotten what it was to love, was sorely fatigued by the expedition he had been constrained to use. The old servant introduced Morel by a private entrance, closed the door of the study, and soon the rustling of a dress announced the arrival of Valentine. She looked marvelously beautiful in her deep mourning dress, and Morel experienced such intense delight in gazing upon her that he felt as if he could almost have dispensed with the conversation of her grandfather. But the easy chair of the old man was heard rolling along the floor, and he soon made his appearance in the room. Noirtier acknowledged by a look of extreme kindness and benevolence the thanks which Morel lavished on him for his timely intervention on behalf of Valentine and himself, an intervention which had saved them from despair. Morel then cast on the invalid an interrogative look as to the new favor which he designed to bestow on him. Valentine was sitting at a little distance from them, timidly awaiting the moment when she should be obliged to speak. Noirtier fixed his eyes on her. "Am I to say what you told me?" asked Valentine. Noirtier made a sign that she was to do so. "Monsieur Morel," said Valentine to the young man, who was regarding her with the most intense interest, "my grandfather, M. Noirtier, had 1,000 things to say, which he told me 3 days ago, and now he has sent for you that I may repeat them to you." "I will repeat them, then, and since he has chosen me as his interpreter, I will be faithful to the trust, and will not alter a word of his intentions." "Oh, I am listening with the greatest impatience," replied the young man. "Speak, I beg of you." Valentine cast down her eyes. This was a good omen for Morel, for he knew that nothing but happiness could have the power of thus overcoming Valentine. "My grandfather intends leaving this house," said she, "and Berrois is looking out for suitable apartments for him in another. But you, Mademoiselle de Villefort, you, who are necessary to M. Noirtier's happiness, interrupted Valentine. "I shall not leave my grandfather, that is an understood thing between us. My apartment will be close to his. Now, M. de Villefort must either give his consent to this plan or his refusal. In the first case, I shall leave directly, and in the second, I shall wait till I am of age, which will be in about 10 months. Then I shall be free, I shall have an independent fortune, and what?" demanded Morel. "And with my grandfather's consent, I shall fulfill the promise which I have made you." Valentine pronounced these last few words in such a low tone that nothing but Morel's intense interest in what she was saying could have enabled him to hear them. "Have I not explained your wishes, grandpapa?" said Valentine, addressing Noirtier. "Yes," looked the old man. "Once under my grandfather's roof, M. Morel can visit me in the presence of my good and worthy protector, if we still feel that the union we contemplated will be likely to ensure our future comfort and happiness. In that case, I shall expect M. Morel to come and claim me at my own hands. But alas, I have heard it said that hearts inflamed by obstacles to their desire grew cold in time of security. I trust we shall never find it so in our experience." "Oh," cried Morel, almost tempted to throw himself on his knees before Noirtier and Valentine, and to adore them as two superior beings, "what have I ever done in my life to merit such unbounded happiness?" "Until that time," continued the young girl in a calm and self-possessed tone of voice, We will conform to circumstances and be guided by the wishes of our friends, so long as those wishes do not tend finally to separate us. In a word, and I repeat it, because it expresses all I wish to convey, we will wait. And I swear to make all the sacrifices which this word imposes, sir, said Morel, not only with resignation, but with cheerfulness. Therefore, continued Valentine, looking playfully at Maximilian, no more inconsiderate actions, no more rash projects. For you surely would not wish to compromise one who from this day regards herself as destined, honorably and happily, to bear your name. Morel looked obedience to her commands. Noirtier regarded the lovers with a look of ineffable tenderness, while Berrois, who had remained in the room in the character of a man privileged to know everything that passed, smiled on the youthful couple as he wiped the perspiration from his bald forehead. "How hot you look, my good Berrois," said Valentine. "Ah, I have been running very fast, mademoiselle, but I must do M. Morel the justice to say that he ran still faster." Noirtier directed their attention to a waiter, on which was placed a decanter containing lemonade and a glass. The decanter was nearly full, with the exception of a little, which had been already drunk by M. Noirtier. "Come, Berrois," said the young girl, "take some of this lemonade. I see you are coveting a good draught of it." "The fact is, mademoiselle," said Berrois, "I am dying with thirst, and since you are so kind as to offer it me, I cannot say I should at all object to drinking your health in a glass of it." "Take some then, and come back immediately." Berrois took away the waiter, and hardly was he outside the door, which in his haste he forgot to shut, than they saw him throw back his head and empty to the very dregs the glass which Valentine had filled. Valentine and Morel were exchanging their adieus in the presence of Noirtier when a ring was heard at the doorbell. It was the signal of a visit. Valentine looked at her watch. "It is past noon," said she, "and today is Saturday. I dare say it is the doctor, grandpapa." Noirtier looked his conviction that she was right in her supposition. "He will come in here, and M. Morel had better go, do you not think so, grandpapa?" "Yes," signed the old man. "Berrois," cried Valentine. "Berrois." "I am coming, mademoiselle," replied he. "Berrois will open the door for you," said Valentine, addressing Morel. "And now remember one thing, monsieur officer, that my grandfather commands you not to take any rash or ill-advised step which would be likely to compromise our happiness." "I promised him to wait," replied Morel, "and I will wait." At this moment Berrois entered. "Who rang?" asked Valentine. "Dr. d'Avrigny," said Berrois, staggering as if he would fall. "What is the matter, Berrois?" said Valentine. The old man did not answer, but looked at his master with wild, staring eyes, while with his cramped hand he grasped a piece of furniture to enable him to stand upright. "He is going to fall," cried Morel. The rigors which had attacked Berrois gradually increased. The features of the face became quite altered, and the convulsive movement of the muscles appeared to indicate the approach of a most serious nervous disorder. Noirtier, seeing Berrois in this pitiable condition, showed by his looks all the various emotions of sorrow and sympathy which can animate the heart of man. Berrois made some steps towards his master. "Ah, sir," said he, "tell me what is the matter with me. I am suffering I cannot see. 1,000 fiery darts are piercing my brain. Ah, Dantès, touch me, pray, Dantès." By this time his haggard eyes had the appearance of being ready to start from their sockets. His head fell back, and the lower extremities of the body began to stiffen. Valentine uttered a cry of horror. Morel took her in his arms, as if to defend her from some unknown danger. M. d'Avrigny, cried she in a stifled voice. "Help, help." Berrois turned round and with a great effort stumbled a few steps, then fell at the feet of Noirtier, and resting his hand on the knee of the invalid, exclaimed, "My master, my good master." At this moment M. de Villefort, attracted by the noise, appeared on the threshold. Morel relaxed his hold of Valentine, and retreating to a distant corner of the room, remained half hidden behind a curtain. Pale, as if he had been gazing on a serpent, he fixed his terrified eye on the agonized sufferer. Noirtier, burning with impatience and terror, was in despair at his utter inability to help his old domestic, whom he regarded more in the light of a friend than a servant. One might, by the fearful swelling of the veins of his forehead and the contraction of the muscles round the eye, trace the terrible conflict which was going on between the living, energetic mind and the inanimate and helpless body. Barrois, his features convulsed, his eyes suffused with blood and his head thrown back, was lying at full length, beating the floor with his hands, while his legs had become so stiff that they looked as if they would break rather than bend. A slight appearance of foam was visible around the mouth, and he breathed painfully and with extreme difficulty. Villefort seemed stupefied with astonishment, and remained gazing intently on the scene before him without uttering a word. He had not seen Morel. After a moment of dumb contemplation, during which his face became pale and his hair seemed to stand on end, he sprang towards the door, crying out, "Doctor, doctor! Come instantly, pray come! Madame, madame!" Cried Valentine, calling her stepmother and running upstairs to meet her. "Come quick, quick, and bring your bottle of smelling salts with you." "What is the matter?" said Madame de Villefort in a harsh and constrained tone. "Oh, come." "Come, but where is the doctor?" exclaimed Villefort. "Where is he?" Madame de Villefort now deliberately descended the staircase. In one hand she held her handkerchief, with which she appeared to be wiping her face, and in the other a bottle of English smelling salts. Her first look on entering the room was at Noirtier, whose face, independent of the emotion which such a scene could not fail of producing, proclaimed him to be in possession of his usual health. Her second glance was at the dying man. She turned pale, and her eye passed quickly from the servant and rested on the master. "In the name of heaven, madame," said Villefort, "where is the doctor? He was with you just now. You see, this is a fit of apoplexy, and he might be saved if he could but be bled. Has he eaten anything lately?" asked Madame de Villefort, eluding her husband's question. "Madame," replied Valentine, "he has not even breakfasted. He has been running very fast on an errand with which my grandfather charged him, and when he returned, took nothing but a glass of lemonade." "Ah," said Madame de Villefort, "why did he not take wine?" Lemonade was a very bad thing for him. Grandpapa's bottle of lemonade was standing just by his side. Poor Barrois was very thirsty, and was thankful to drink anything he could find. Madame de Villefort started. Noirtier looked at her with a glance of the most profound scrutiny. "He has such a short neck," said she. "Madame," said Villefort, "I ask where is M. d'Avrigny? In God's name answer me." "He is with Edward, who is not quite well," replied Madame de Villefort, no longer being able to avoid answering. Villefort rushed upstairs to fetch him. "Take this," said Madame de Villefort, giving her smelling bottle to Valentine. "They will, no doubt, bleed him. Therefore I will retire, for I cannot endure the sight of blood," and she followed her husband upstairs. Morel now emerged from his hiding place, where he had remained quite unperceived, so great had been the general confusion. "Go away as quick as you can, Maximilian," said Valentine, "and stay till I send for you. Go." Morel looked towards Noirtier for permission to retire. The old man, who had preserved all his usual coolness, made a sign to him to do so. The young man pressed Valentine's hand to his lips, and then left the house by a back staircase. At the same moment that he quitted the room, Villefort and the doctor entered by an opposite door. Barrois was now showing signs of returning consciousness. The crisis seemed past. A low moaning was heard, and he raised himself on one knee. D'Avrigny and Villefort laid him on a couch. "What do you prescribe, doctor?" demanded Villefort. "Give me some water and ether. You have some in the house, have you not?" "Yes." "Send for some oil of turpentine and tartar emetic." Villefort immediately dispatched a messenger. "And now let everyone retire." "Must I go too?" asked Valentine timidly. Yes, mademoiselle, you especially, replied the doctor abruptly. Valentine looked at M.D. Avrigny with astonishment, kissed her grandfather on the forehead, and left the room. The doctor closed the door after her with a gloomy air. Look, doctor, said Villefort, he is quite coming round again. I really do not think, after all, it is anything of consequence. M.D. Avrigny answered by a melancholy smile. How do you feel, Barrois? Asked he. A little better, sir. Will you drink some of this ether and water? I will try, but don't touch me. Why not? Because I feel that if you were only to touch me with the tip of your finger, the fit would return. Drink. Barrois took the glass, and, raising it to his purple lips, took about half of the liquid offered him. Where do you suffer? Asked the doctor. Everywhere. I feel cramps over my whole body. Do you find any dazzling sensation before the eyes? Yes. Any noise in the ears? Frightful. When did you first feel that? Just now, suddenly. Yes, like a clap of thunder. Did you feel nothing of it yesterday or the day before? Nothing. No drowsiness. None. What have you eaten today? I have eaten nothing. I only drank a glass of my master's lemonade, that's all. And Barrois turned towards Noirtier, who, immovably fixed in his armchair, was contemplating this terrible scene without allowing a word or a movement to escape him. Where is this lemonade? Asked the doctor eagerly. Downstairs in the decanter. Whereabouts downstairs? In the kitchen. Shall I go and fetch it, doctor? Inquired Villefort. No, stay here and try to make Barrois drink the rest of this glass of ether and water. I will go myself and fetch the lemonade. D. Avrigny bounded towards the door, flew down the back staircase, and almost knocked down Madame de Villefort in his haste, who was herself going down to the kitchen. She cried out, but D. Avrigny paid no attention to her. Possessed with but one idea, he cleared the last 4 steps with a bound, and rushed into the kitchen, where he saw the decanter about 3 parts empty still standing on the waiter, where it had been left. He darted upon it as an eagle would seize upon its prey. Panting with loss of breath, he returned to the room he had just left. Madame de Villefort was slowly ascending the steps which led to her room. Is this the decanter you spoke of? Asked D. Avrigny. Yes, doctor. Is this the same lemonade of which you partook? I believe so. What did it taste like? It had a bitter taste. The doctor poured some drops of the lemonade into the palm of his hand, put his lips to it, and after having rinsed his mouth as a man does when he is tasting wine, he spat the liquor into the fireplace. It is no doubt the same, said he. Did you drink some too, M. Noirtier? Yes. And did you also discover a bitter taste? Yes. Oh, doctor, cried Barrois, the fit is coming on again. Oh, do something for me. The doctor flew to his patient. That emetic, Villefort, see if it is coming. Villefort sprang into the passage, exclaiming, the emetic, the emetic. Is it come yet? No one answered. The most profound terror reigned throughout the house. If I had anything by means of which I could inflate the lungs, said D. Avrigny, looking around him, perhaps I might prevent suffocation. But there is nothing which would do, nothing. Oh, sir, cried Barrois, are you going to let me die without help? Oh, I am dying. Oh, save me. A pen, said the doctor. There was one lying on the table. He endeavored to introduce it into the mouth of the patient, who, in the midst of his convulsions, was making vain attempts to vomit, but the jaws were so clenched that the pen could not pass them. This second attack was much more violent than the first, and he had slipped from the couch to the ground, where he was writhing in agony. The doctor left him in this paroxysm, knowing that he could do nothing to alleviate it, and going up to Noirtier said abruptly, How do you find yourself? Well, yes. Have you any weight on the chest, or does your stomach feel light and comfortable? Yes. Then you feel pretty much as you generally do after you have had the dose which I am accustomed to give you every Sunday. Yes. Did Barrois make your lemonade? Yes. Was it you who asked him to drink some of it? No. Was it M. de Villefort? No. Madame? No. It was your granddaughter then, was it not? Yes. A groan from Berwa, accompanied by a yawn which seemed to crack the very jawbones, attracted the attention of M. d'Avrigny. He left M. Noirtier and returned to the sick man. "Berwa," said the doctor, "can you speak?" Berwa muttered a few unintelligible words. "Try and make an effort to do so, my good man," said d'Avrigny. Berwa reopened his bloodshot eyes. "Who made the lemonade?" "I did." "Did you bring it to your master directly it was made?" "No." "You left it somewhere then in the meantime?" "Yes, I left it in the pantry because I was called away." "Who brought it into this room then?" "Mademoiselle Valentine." D'Avrigny struck his forehead with his hand. "Gracious heaven!" exclaimed he. "Doctor, doctor!" cried Berwa, who felt another fit coming. "Will they never bring that emetic?" asked the doctor. "Here is a glass with one already prepared," said Villefort, entering the room. "Who prepared it?" "The chemist who came here with me." "Drink it," said the doctor to Berwa. "Impossible, doctor. It is too late. My throat is closing up. I am choking. Oh, my heart! Ah, my head! Oh, what agony! Shall I suffer like this long?" "No, no, friend," replied the doctor. "You will soon cease to suffer." "Ah, I understand you," said the unhappy man. "My God, have mercy upon me!" And uttering a fearful cry, Berwa fell back as if he had been struck by lightning. D'Avrigny put his hand to his heart and placed a glass before his lips. "Well," said Villefort, "go to the kitchen and get me some syrup of violets." Villefort went immediately. "Do not be alarmed, M. Noirtier," said Avrigny. "I am going to take my patient into the next room to bleed him. This sort of attack is very frightful to witness." And taking Berwa under the arms, he dragged him into an adjoining room, but almost immediately he returned to fetch the lemonade. Noirtier closed his right eye. "You want Valentine, do you not? I will tell them to send her to you." Villefort returned, and d'Avrigny met him in the passage. "Well, how is he now?" asked he. "Come in here," said d'Avrigny, and he took him into the chamber where the sick man lay. "Is he still in a fit?" said the procureur. "He is dead." Villefort drew back a few steps, and clasping his hands, exclaimed with real amazement and sympathy, "Dead! And so soon too?" "Yes, it is very soon," said the doctor, looking at the corpse before him. "But that ought not to astonish you. Monsieur and Madame de Saint Méran died as soon. People die very suddenly in your house, M. de Villefort." "What?" cried the magistrate with an accent of horror and consternation. "Are you still harping on that terrible idea?" "Still, sir, and I shall always do so," replied d'Avrigny, "for it has never for one instant ceased to retain possession of my mind. And that you may be quite sure I am not mistaken this time, listen well to what I am going to say, M. de Villefort." The magistrate trembled convulsively. "There is a poison which destroys life almost without leaving any perceptible traces. I know it well. I have studied it in all its forms and in the effects which it produces. I recognize the presence of this poison in the case of poor Berwa as well as in that of Madame de Saint Méran. There is a way of detecting its presence. It restores the blue color of litmus paper reddened by an acid, and it turns syrup of violets green. We have no litmus paper, but see, here they come with the syrup of violets." The doctor was right. Steps were heard in the passage. M. d'Avrigny opened the door, and took from the hands of the chambermaid a cup which contained 2 or 3 spoonfuls of the syrup. He then carefully closed the door. "Look," said he to the procureur, whose heart beat so loudly that it might almost be heard. "Here is in this cup some syrup of violets, and this decanter contains the remainder of the lemonade of which M. Noirtier and Berwa partook. If the lemonade be pure and inoffensive, the syrup will retain its color. If, on the contrary, the lemonade be drugged with poison, the syrup will become green. Look closely." The doctor then slowly poured some drops of the lemonade from the decanter into the cup, and in an instant a light cloudy sediment began to form at the bottom of the cup. This sediment first took a blue shade, then from the color of sapphire it passed to that of opal, and from opal to emerald. Arrived at this last hue, it changed no more. The result of the experiment left no doubt whatever on the mind. "The unfortunate Barrois has been poisoned," said d'Avrigny, "and I will maintain this assertion before God and man." Villefort said nothing, but he clasped his hands, opened his haggard eyes, and, overcome with his emotion, sank into a chair.
Chapter 80.
M. d'Avrigny soon restored the magistrate to consciousness, who had looked like a second corpse in that chamber of death. "Oh, death is in my house," cried Villefort. "Say rather crime," replied the doctor. "M. d'Avrigny," cried Villefort, "I cannot tell you all I feel at this moment, terror, grief, madness." "Yes," said M. d'Avrigny, with an imposing calmness, "but I think it is now time to act. I think it is time to stop this torrent of mortality. I can no longer bear to be in possession of these secrets without the hope of seeing the victims and society generally revenged." Villefort cast a gloomy look around him. "In my house," murmured he, "in my house." "Come, magistrate," said M. d'Avrigny, "show yourself a man. As an interpreter of the law, do honor to your profession by sacrificing your selfish interests to it." "You make me shudder, doctor. Do you talk of a sacrifice?" "I do. Do you then suspect anyone?" "I suspect no one. Death raps at your door, it enters, it goes, not blindfolded, but circumspectly from room to room. Well, I follow its course, I track its passage. I adopt the wisdom of the ancients and feel my way, for my friendship for your family and my respect for you are as a twofold bandage over my eyes. Well, oh, speak, speak, doctor. I shall have courage." "Well, sir, you have in your establishment, or in your family, perhaps, one of the frightful monstrosities of which each century produces only one. Locusta and Agrippina, living at the same time, were an exception, and proved the determination of Providence to effect the entire ruin of the Roman Empire, sullied by so many crimes. Brunhilde and Fredegund were the results of the painful struggle of civilization in its infancy, when man was learning to control mind, were it even by an emissary from the realms of darkness. All these women had been, or were, beautiful. The same flower of innocence had flourished, or was still flourishing, on their brow, that is seen on the brow of the culprit in your house." Villefort shrieked, clasped his hands, and looked at the doctor with a supplicating air. But the latter went on without pity. "Seek whom the crime will profit," says an axiom of jurisprudence. "Doctor," cried Villefort, "alas, doctor, how often has man's justice been deceived by those fatal words! I know not why, but I feel that this crime you acknowledge, then, the existence of the crime." "Yes, I see too plainly that it does exist, but it seems that it is intended to affect me personally. I fear an attack myself, after all these disasters." "Oh, man," murmured d'Avrigny, "the most selfish of all animals, the most personal of all creatures, who believes the earth turns, the sun shines, and death strikes for him alone, an ant cursing God from the top of a blade of grass. And have those who have lost their lives lost nothing? M. de Saint-Emran, Madame de Saint-Emran, M. Noirtier, how? M. Noirtier, yes, think you it was the poor servant's life was coveted? No, no, like Shakespeare's Polonius, he died for another. It was Noirtier the lemonade was intended for, it is Noirtier, logically speaking, who drank it. The other drank it only by accident, and although Barrois is dead, it was Noirtier whose death was wished for. But why did it not kill my father? I told you one evening in the garden after Madame de Saint-Emran's death, because his system is accustomed to that very poison, and the dose was trifling to him, which would be fatal to another, because no one knows, not even the assassin, that, for the last 12 months I have given M. Noirtier brucine for his paralytic affection, while the assassin is not ignorant, for he has proved that brucine is a violent poison. Oh, have pity, murmured Villefort, wringing his hands. Follow the culprit's steps. He first kills M. de Saint-Emran. Oh, doctor, I would swear to it. What I heard of his symptoms agrees too well with what I have seen in the other cases. Villefort ceased to contend. he only groaned. He first kills M. de Saint-Emran, repeated the doctor, then Madame de Saint-Emran, a double fortune to inherit. Villefort wiped the perspiration from his forehead. Listen attentively. Alas, stammered Villefort, I do not lose a single word. M. Noirtier, resumed M. d'Avrigny in the same pitiless tone. M. Noirtier had once made a will against you, against your family, in favor of the poor, in fact. M. Noirtier is spared, because nothing is expected from him. But he has no sooner destroyed his first will and made a second, than, for fear he should make a third, he is struck down. The will was made the day before yesterday, I believe. You see there has been no time lost. Oh, mercy, M. d'Avrigny. No mercy, sir. The physician has a sacred mission on earth, and to fulfill it he begins at the source of life and goes down to the mysterious darkness of the tomb. When crime has been committed, and God, doubtless in anger, turns away his face, it is for the physician to bring the culprit to justice. Have mercy on my child, sir, murmured Villefort. You see it is yourself who have first named her, you, her father. Have pity on Valentine. Listen, it is impossible. I would as willingly accuse myself. Valentine, whose heart is pure as a diamond or a lily. No pity, procureur. The crime is fragrant. Mademoiselle herself packed all the medicines which were sent to M. de Saint-Emran, and M. de Saint-Emran is dead. Mademoiselle de Villefort prepared all the cooling draughts which Madame de Saint-Emran took, and Madame de Saint-Emran is dead. Mademoiselle de Villefort took from the hands of Barrois, who was sent out, the lemonade which M. Noirtier had every morning, and he has escaped by a miracle. Mademoiselle de Villefort is the culprit, she is the poisoner. To you, as the king's attorney, I denounce Mademoiselle de Villefort. Do your duty. Doctor, I resist no longer, I can no longer defend myself, I believe you. But for pity's sake, spare my life, my honor. M. de Villefort, replied the doctor, with increased vehemence, there are occasions when I dispense with all foolish human circumspection. If your daughter had committed only one crime, and I saw her meditating another, I would say warn her, punish her, let her pass the remainder of her life in a convent, weeping and praying. If she had committed 2 crimes, I would say here M. de Villefort is a poison that the prisoner is not acquainted with, one that has no known antidote, quick as thought, rapid as lightning, mortal as the thunderbolt. Give her that poison, recommending her soul to God, and save your honor and your life, for it is yours she aims at. And I can picture her approaching your pillow with her hypocritical smiles and her sweet exhortations. Woe to you, M. de Villefort, if you do not strike first. This is what I would say had she only killed 2 persons, but she has seen 3 deaths, has contemplated 3 murdered persons, has knelt by 3 corpses. To the scaffold with the poisoner, to the scaffold. Do you talk of your honor? Do what I tell you, and immortality awaits you. Villefort fell on his knees. Listen, said he, I have not the strength of mind you have, or rather that which you would not have, if instead of my daughter Valentine, your daughter Madeleine were concerned. The doctor turned pale. Doctor, every son of woman is born to suffer and to die. I am content to suffer and to await death. Beware, said M. d'Avrigny, it may come slowly. You will see it approach after having struck your father, your wife, perhaps your son. Villefort, suffocating, pressed the doctor's arm. Listen, cried he, pity me, help me. No, my daughter is not guilty. If you drag us both before a tribunal, I will still say, no, my daughter is not guilty. There is no crime in my house. I will not acknowledge a crime in my house, for when crime enters a dwelling, it is like death, it does not come alone. Listen, what does it signify to you if I am murdered? Are you my friend? Are you a man? Have you a heart? No, you are a physician. Well, I tell you I will not drag my daughter before a tribunal and give her up to the executioner. The bare idea would kill me, would drive me like a madman to dig my heart out with my fingernails. And if you were mistaken, doctor, if it were not my daughter, if I should come one day, pale as a spectre, and say to you, assassin, you have killed my child. Hold, if that should happen, although I am a Christian, M.D. Avrigny, I should kill myself. Well, said the doctor, after a moment's silence, I will wait. Villefort looked at him as if he had doubted his words. Only, continued M.D. Avrigny, with a slow and solemn tone, if anyone falls ill in your house, if you feel yourself attacked, do not send for me, for I will come no more. I will consent to share this dreadful secret with you, but I will not allow shame and remorse to grow and increase in my conscience, as crime and misery will in your house. Then you abandon me, doctor. Yes, for I can follow you no farther, and I only stop at the foot of the scaffold. Some further discovery will be made, which will bring this dreadful tragedy to a close. Adieu, I entreat you, doctor. All the horrors that disturb my thoughts make your house odious and fatal. Adieu, sir. One single word more, doctor. You go, leaving me in all the horror of my situation, after increasing it by what you have revealed to me. But what will be reported of the sudden death of the poor old servant? True, said M.D. Avrigny, we will return. The doctor went out first, followed by M. de Villefort. The terrified servants were on the stairs, and in the passage where the doctor would pass. Sir, said Avrigny to Villefort, so loud that all might hear, poor Barrois has led too sedentary a life of late. Accustomed formerly to ride on horseback, or in the carriage, to the four corners of Europe, the monotonous walk around that armchair has killed him, his blood has thickened. He was stout, had a short, thick neck. He was attacked with apoplexy, and I was called in too late. By the way, added he in a low tone, take care to throw away that cup of syrup of violets in the ashes. The doctor, without shaking hands with Villefort, without adding a word to what he had said, went out, amid the tears and lamentations of the whole household. The same evening all Villefort's servants, who had assembled in the kitchen and had a long consultation, came to tell Madame de Villefort that they wished to leave. No entreaty, no proposition of increased wages could induce them to remain. To every argument they replied, we must go, for death is in this house. They all left in spite of prayers and entreaties, testifying their regret at leaving so good a master and mistress, and especially Mademoiselle Valentine, so good, so kind, and so gentle. Villefort looked at Valentine as they said this. She was in tears, and, strange as it was, in spite of the emotions he felt at the sight of these tears, he looked also at Madame de Villefort, and it appeared to him as if a slight gloomy smile had passed over her thin lips, like a meteor scene passing inauspiciously between two clouds in a stormy sky.
Chapter 81.
The evening of the day on which the Count of Morcerf had left Danglars' house, with feelings of shame and anger at the rejection of the projected alliance, Andrea Cavalcanti, with curled hair, mustaches in perfect order, and white gloves which fitted admirably, had entered the courtyard of the banker's house in Rue de la Chausse, Antin. He had not been more than 10 minutes in the drawing-room before he drew Danglars aside into the recess of a bow window, and, after an ingenious preamble, related to him all his anxieties and cares since his noble father's departure. He acknowledged the extreme kindness which had been shown him by the banker's family, in which he had been received as a son, and where, besides, his warmest affections had found an object on which to center in Mademoiselle Danglars. Danglars listened with the most profound attention. He had expected this declaration for the last 2 or 3 days, and when at last it came his eyes glistened as much as they had lowered on listening to Morcerf. He would not, however, yield immediately to the young man's request, but made a few conscientious objections. Are you not rather young, Andrea, to think of marrying? I think not, sir, replied Cavalcanti. In Italy the nobility generally marry young. Life is so uncertain that we ought to secure happiness while it is within our reach. Well, sir, said Danglars, In case your proposals, which do me honor, are accepted by my wife and daughter, by whom shall the preliminary arrangements be settled? So important a negotiation should, I think, be conducted by the respective fathers of the young people. Sir, my father is a man of great foresight and prudence. Thinking that I might wish to settle in France, he left me at his departure, together with the papers establishing my identity, a letter promising, if he approved of my choice, 150,000 livres per annum from the day I was married. So far as I can judge, I suppose this to be a quarter of my father's revenue. I, said Danglars, have always intended giving my daughter 500,000 francs as her dowry. She is, besides, my sole heiress. All would then be easily arranged if the Baroness and her daughter are willing. We should command an annuity of 175,000 livres. Supposing, also, I should persuade the Marquis to give me my capital, which is not likely but still is possible, we would place these 2 or 3 millions in your hands, whose talent might make it realize 10%. I never give more than 4%, and generally only 3.5%, but to my son-in-law I would give 5%, and we would share the profits. Very good, father-in-law, said Cavalcanti, yielding to his low-born nature, which would escape sometimes through the aristocratic gloss with which he sought to conceal it. Correcting himself immediately, he said, "Excuse me, sir. Hope alone makes me almost mad. What will not reality do?" "But," said Danglars, who, on his part, did not perceive how soon the conversation, which was at first disinterested, was turning to a business transaction, "there is, doubtless, a part of your fortune your father could not refuse you." "Which?" asked the young man. "That you inherit from your mother." "Truly, from my mother, Leonora Corsinari." "How much may it amount to?" "Indeed, sir," said Andrea, "I assure you I have never given the subject a thought, but I suppose it must have been at least 2 millions. Danglars felt as much overcome with joy as the miser who finds a lost treasure, or as the shipwrecked mariner who feels himself on solid ground, instead of in the abyss which he expected would swallow him up. "Well, sir," said Andrea, bowing to the banker respectfully, "may I hope?" "You may not only hope," said Danglars, "but consider it a settled thing if no obstacle arises on your part." "I am indeed rejoiced," said Andrea. "But," said Danglars thoughtfully, "how is it that your patron M. de Monte Cristo did not make his proposal for you?" Andrea blushed imperceptibly. "I have just left the Count, sir," said he. "He is, doubtless, a delightful man, but inconceivably peculiar in his ideas. He esteems me highly. He even told me he had not the slightest doubt that my father would give me the capital instead of the interest of my property. He has promised to use his influence to obtain it for me, but he also declared that he never had taken on himself the responsibility of making proposals for another, and he never would. I must, however, do him the justice to add that he assured me, if ever he had regretted the repugnance he felt to such a step, it was on this occasion, because he thought the projected union would be a happy and suitable one. Besides, if he will do nothing officially, he will answer any questions you propose to him. And now," continued he, with one of his most charming smiles, "having finished talking to the father-in-law, I must address myself to the banker." "And what may you have to say to him?" said Danglars, laughing in his turn. "That the day after tomorrow I shall have to draw upon you for about 4,000 francs, but the Count, expecting my bachelor's revenue could not suffice for the coming month's outlay, has offered me a draft for 20,000 francs. It bears his signature, as you see, which is all sufficient. Bring me 1,000,000 such as that," said Danglars. "I shall be well pleased," putting the draft in his pocket. "Fix your own hour for tomorrow, and my cashier shall call on you with a check for 80,000 francs. At 10 o'clock then, if you please. I should like it early, as I am going into the country tomorrow." "Very well, at 10 o'clock. You are still at the Hôtel des Princes?" "Yes." The following morning, with the banker's usual punctuality, the 80,000 francs were placed in the young man's hands, as he was on the point of starting, after having left 200 francs for Caderousse. He went out chiefly to avoid this dangerous enemy, and returned as late as possible in the evening. But scarcely had he stepped out of his carriage when the porter met him with a parcel in his hand. "Sir," said he, "that man has been here." "What man?" said Andrea carelessly, apparently forgetting him whom he but too well recollected. "Him to whom your excellency pays that little annuity." "Oh," said Andrea, "my father's old servant." "Well, you gave him the 200 francs I had left for him." "Yes, your excellency." Andrea had expressed a wish to be thus addressed. "But," continued the porter, "he would not take them." Andrea turned pale, but as it was dark his pallor was not perceptible. "What? He would not take them," said he with slight emotion. "No, he wished to speak to your excellency. I told him you were gone out, and after some dispute he believed me and gave me this letter, which he had brought with him already sealed." "Give it me," said Andrea, and he read by the light of his carriage lamp. "You know where I live. I expect you tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock." Andrea examined it carefully to ascertain if the letter had been opened, or if any indiscreet eyes had seen its contents. But it was so carefully folded that no one could have read it, and the seal was perfect. "Very well," said he. "Poor man, he is a worthy creature." He left the porter to ponder on these words, not knowing which most to admire, the master or the servant. "Take out the horses quickly and come up to me," said Andrea to his groom. In 2 seconds the young man had reached his room and burnt Caedros's letter. The servant entered just as he had finished. "You are about my height, Pierre," said he. "I have that honor, your excellency." "You had a new livery yesterday." "Yes, sir." "I have an engagement with a pretty little girl for this evening and do not wish to be known. Lend me your livery till tomorrow. I may sleep perhaps at an inn." Pierre obeyed. 5 minutes after, Andrea left the hotel, completely disguised, took a cabriolet, and ordered the driver to take him to the Cheval Rouge at Picpus. The next morning he left that inn as he had left the Hotel des Princes, without being noticed, walked down the Faubourg Saint-Antoine, along the boulevard to Rue Ménilmontant, and stopping at the door of the third house on the left looked for someone of whom to make inquiry in the porter's absence. "For whom are you looking, my fine fellow?" asked the fruiteress on the opposite side. "Monsieur Paletin, if you please, my good woman," replied Andrea. "A retired baker?" asked the fruiteress. "Exactly. He lives at the end of the yard on the left on the 3rd story." Andrea went as she directed him, and on the 3rd floor he found a hare's paw, which, by the hasty ringing of the bell, it was evident he pulled with considerable ill temper. A moment after Caedros's face appeared at the grating in the door. "Ah, you are punctual," said he, as he drew back the door. "Confound you and your punctuality," said Andrea, throwing himself into a chair in a manner which implied that he would rather have flung it at the head of his host. "Come, come, my little fellow, don't be angry. See, I have thought about you. Look at the good breakfast we are going to have. Nothing but what you are fond of." Andrea, indeed, inhaled the scent of something cooking which was not unwelcome to him, hungry as he was. It was that mixture of fat and garlic peculiar to Provençal kitchens of an inferior order, added to that of dried fish, and above all, the pungent smell of musk and cloves. These odors escaped from 2 deep dishes which were covered and placed on a stove, and from a copper pan placed in an old iron pot. In an adjoining room Andrea saw also a tolerably clean table prepared for two bottles of wine sealed, the one with green, the other with yellow, a supply of brandy in a decanter, and a measure of fruit in a cabbage leaf, cleverly arranged on an earthenware plate. "What do you think of it, my little fellow?" said Caedros. "Aye, that smells good. You know I used to be a good cook. Do you recollect how you used to lick your fingers? You were among the first who tasted any of my dishes, and I think you relished them tolerably." While speaking, Caedros went on peeling a fresh supply of onions. "But," said Andrea ill-temperedly, "by my faith, if it was only to breakfast with you that you disturbed me, I wish the devil had taken you." "My boy," said Caedros sententiously, "one can talk while eating. And then, you ungrateful being, you are not pleased to see an old friend." I am weeping with joy." He was truly crying, but it would have been difficult to say whether joy or the onions produced the greatest effect on the lachrymal glands of the old innkeeper of the Pont du Gard. "Hold your tongue, hypocrite," said Andrea. "You love me." "Yes, I do, or may the devil take me." "I know it is a weakness," said Kadrouse, "but it overpowers me. And yet it has not prevented your sending for me to play me some trick." "Come," said Kadrouse, wiping his large knife on his apron, "if I did not like you, do you think I should endure the wretched life you lead me? Think for a moment. You have your servant's clothes on you, therefore keep a servant. I have none, and am obliged to prepare my own meals. You abuse my cookery because you dine at the table d'hôte of the Hôtel des Princes or the Café de Paris. Well, I too could keep a servant. I too could have a Tilbury. I too could dine where I like. But why do I not? Because I would not annoy my little Benedetto. Come, just acknowledge that I could, eh?" This address was accompanied by a look which was by no means difficult to understand. "Well," said Andrea, "admitting your love, why do you want me to breakfast with you? That I may have the pleasure of seeing you, my little fellow. What is the use of seeing me after we have made all our arrangements?" Dear friend," said Kadrouse, "are wills ever made without codicils? But you first came to breakfast, did you not? Well, sit down, and let us begin with these pilchards and this fresh butter, which I have put on some vine leaves to please you, wicked one. Ah, yes. You look at my room, my 4 straw chairs, my images, 3 francs each. But what do you expect? This is not the Hôtel des Princes. Come, you are growing discontented, you are no longer happy, you who only wish to live like a retired baker." Kadrouse sighed. "Well, what have you to say? You have seen your dream realized. I can still say it is a dream. A retired baker, my poor Benedetto, is rich, he has an annuity. Well, you have an annuity. I have. Yes, since I bring you your 200 francs. Kadrouse shrugged his shoulders. "It is humiliating," said he, "thus to receive money given grudgingly, an uncertain supply which may soon fail. You see I am obliged to economize, in case your prosperity should cease. Well, my friend, fortune is inconstant, as the chaplain of the regiment said. I know your prosperity is great, you rascal. You are to marry the daughter of Danglars." "What, of Danglars?" "Yes, to be sure. Must I say Baron Danglars? I might as well say Count Benedetto. He was an old friend of mine, and if he had not so bad a memory he ought to invite me to your wedding, seeing he came to mine." Yes, to mine. Gad, he was not so proud then. He was an underclerk to the good M. Morrel. I have dined many times with him and the Count of Morcerf, so you see I have some high connections, and were I to cultivate them a little, we might meet in the same drawing rooms. Come, your jealousy represents everything to you in the wrong light. That is all very fine, Benedetto mio, but I know what I am saying. Perhaps I may one day put on my best coat, and presenting myself at the great gate, introduce myself. Meanwhile let us sit down and eat." Kadrouse set the example, and attacked the breakfast with good appetite, praising each dish he set before his visitor. The latter seemed to have resigned himself. He drew the corks and partook largely of the fish with the garlic and fat. "Ah, mate," said Kadrouse, "you are getting on better terms with your old landlord." "Faith, yes," replied Andrea, whose hunger prevailed over every other feeling. "So you like it, you rogue? So much that I wonder how a man who can cook thus can complain of hard living. Do you see," said Kadrouse, "all my happiness is marred by one thought. What is that? That I am dependent on another, I who have always gained my own livelihood honestly. Do not let that disturb you, I have enough for 2. No, truly, you may believe me if you will, at the end of every month I am tormented by remorse. Good Kadrouse. So much so that yesterday I would not take the 200 francs. Yes, you wished to speak to me, but was it indeed remorse, tell me? True remorse, and besides an idea had struck me." Andrea shuddered. He always did so at Kadrouse's ideas. "It is miserable, do you see, always to wait till the end of the month." "Oh," said Andrea philosophically, determined to watch his companion narrowly, "does not life pass in waiting? Do I, for instance, fare better? Well, I wait patiently, do I not? Yes, because instead of expecting 200 wretched francs, you expect 5 or 6,000, perhaps 10, perhaps even 12, for you take care not to let anyone know the utmost. Down there you always had little presents and Christmas boxes, which you tried to hide from your poor friend Kadrouse. Fortunately, he is a cunning fellow, that friend Kadrouse. There you are beginning again to ramble, to talk again and again of the past. But what is the use of teasing me with going all over that again? Ah, you are only 1 and 20 and can forget the past. I am 50 and am obliged to recollect it. But let us return to business. Yes, I was going to say, if I were in your place, well, I would realize. How would you realize? I would ask for 6 months in advance, under pretense of being able to purchase a farm. Then with my 6 months I would decamp. Well, well, said Andrea, that isn't a bad idea. My dear friend, said Kadrouse, eat of my bread and take my advice. You will be none the worse off, physically or morally. But, said Andrea, why do you not act on the advice you gave me? Why do you not realize a 6 months, a year's advance even, and retire to Brussels? Instead of living the retired baker, you might live as a bankrupt, using his privileges. That would be very good. But how the devil would you have me retire on 1,200 francs? Ah, Kadrouse, said Andrea, how covetous you are. 2 months ago you were dying with hunger. The appetite grows by what it feeds on, said Kadrouse, grinning and showing his teeth, like a monkey laughing or a tiger growling. And added he, biting off with his large white teeth an enormous mouthful of bread, I have formed a plan. Kadrouse's plans alarmed Andrea still more than his ideas. Ideas were but the germ, the plan was reality. Let me see your plan. I dare say it is a pretty one. Why not? Who formed the plan by which we left the establishment of M. A. Was it not I? And it was no bad one, I believe, since here we are. I do not say, replied Andrea, that you never make a good one, but let us see your plan. Well, pursued Kadrouse, can you, without expending 1 sou, put me in the way of getting 15,000 francs? No, 15,000 are not enough. I cannot again become an honest man with less than 30,000 francs. No, replied Andrea dryly, no, I cannot. I do not think you understand me, replied Kadrouse calmly. I said without your laying out a sou. Do you want me to commit a robbery? To spoil all my good fortune and yours with mine, and both of us to be dragged down there again? It would make very little difference to me, said Kadrouse, if I were retaken. I am a poor creature to live alone and sometimes pine for my old comrades. Not like you, heartless creature, who would be glad never to see them again. Andrea did more than tremble this time. He turned pale. Come, Kadrouse, no nonsense, said he. Don't alarm yourself, my little Benedetto, but just point out to me some means of gaining those 30,000 francs without your assistance, and I will contrive it. Well, I'll try to contrive some way, said Andrea. Meanwhile you will raise my monthly allowance to 500 francs, my little fellow. I have a fancy, and mean to get a housekeeper. Well, you shall have your 500 francs, said Andrea. But it is very hard for me. My poor Kadrouse, you take advantage, bah, said Kadrouse, when you have access to countless stores. One would have said Andrea anticipated his companion's words. So did his eye flash like lightning, but it was but for a moment. True, he replied, and my protector is very kind. That dear protector, said Kadrouse, and how much does he give you monthly? 5,000 francs, as many thousands as you give me hundreds. Truly, it is only bastards who are thus fortunate. 5,000 francs per month. What the devil can you do with all that? Oh, it is no trouble to spend that, and I am like you, I want capital. Capital, yes, I understand everyone would like capital. Well, and I shall get it. Who will give it to you, your prince? Yes, my prince, but unfortunately I must wait. You must wait for what? Asked Kadrouse. For his death. The death of your prince? Yes, how so? Because he has made his will in my favor. Indeed, on my honor. For how much? For 500,000, only that. It is little enough, but so it is. No, it cannot be. Are you my friend, Kadrouse? Yes, in life or death. Well, I will tell you a secret. What is it? But remember, pardieu. Mute as a carp. Well, I think Andrea stopped and looked around. You think? Do not fear, pardieu. We are alone. I think I have discovered my father. Your true father? Yes, not old Cavalcanti. No, for he has gone again, the true one, as you say. And that father is well, Kadrouse, it is Monte Cristo. Bah! Yes, you understand, that explains all. He cannot acknowledge me openly, it appears, but he does it through M. Cavalcanti, and gives him 50,000 francs for it. 50,000 francs for being your father. I would have done it for half that, for 20,000, for 15,000. Why did you not think of me, ungrateful man? Did I know anything about it when it was all done when I was down there? Ah, truly, and you say that by his will he leaves me 500,000 livres. Are you sure of it? He showed it me, but that is not all. There is a codicil, as I said just now, probably, and in that codicil he acknowledges me. Oh, the good father, the brave father, the very honest father, said Kadrouse, twirling a plate in the air between his two hands. Now say if I conceal anything from you. No, and your confidence makes you honorable in my opinion, and your princely father, is he rich, very rich? Yes, he is that. He does not himself know the amount of his fortune. Is it possible? It is evident enough to me, who am always at his house. The other day a banker's clerk brought him 50,000 francs in a portfolio about the size of your plate. Yesterday, his banker brought him 100,000 francs in gold. Kadrouse was filled with wonder. The young man's words sounded to him like metal, and he thought he could hear the rushing of cascades of louis. And you go into that house? Cried he briskly. When I like. Kadrouse was thoughtful for a moment. It was easy to perceive he was revolving some unfortunate idea in his mind. Then suddenly, how I should like to see all that, cried he. How beautiful it must be. It is, in fact, magnificent, said Andrea. And does he not live in the Champs-Élysées? Yes, no 30. Ah, said Kadrouse, no 30. Yes, a fine house standing alone between a courtyard and a garden, you must know it. Possibly, but it is not the exterior I care for, it is the interior. What beautiful furniture there must be in it. Have you ever seen the Tuileries? No, well, it surpasses that. It must be worth one's while to stoop, Andrea, when that good M. Monte Cristo lets fall his purse. It is not worth while to wait for that, said Andrea. Money is as plentiful in that house as fruit in an orchard. But you should take me there one day with you. How can I? On what plea? You are right, but you have made my mouth water. I must absolutely see it. I shall find a way. No nonsense, Kadrouse. I will offer myself as floor polisher. The rooms are all carpeted. Well then, I must be contented to imagine it. That is the best plan, believe me. Try, at least, to give me an idea of what it is. How can I? Nothing is easier. Is it large? Middling. How is it arranged? Faith, I should require pen, ink, and paper to make a plan. They are all here, said Kadrouse briskly. He fetched from an old secretaire a sheet of white paper and pen and ink. Here, said Kadrouse, draw me all that on the paper, my boy. Andrea took the pen with an imperceptible smile and began. The house, as I said, is between the court and the garden. In this way, do you see? Andrea drew the garden, the court, and the house. High walls. Not more than 8 or 10 feet. That is not prudent, said Kadrouse. In the court are orange trees in pots, turf, and clumps of flowers. And no steel traps. No, the stables are on either side of the gate which you see there. And Andrea continued his plan. Let us see the ground floor, said Kadrouse. On the ground floor, dining room, 2 drawing rooms, billiard room, staircase in the hall, and a little back staircase. Windows, magnificent windows, so beautiful, so large, that I believe a man of your size should pass through each frame. Why the devil have they any stairs with such windows? Luxury has everything, but shutters. Yes, but they are never used. That Count of Monte Cristo is an original who loves to look at the sky even at night. And where do the servants sleep? Oh, they have a house to themselves. Picture to yourself a pretty coach house at the right-hand side where the ladders are kept. Well, over that coach house are the servants' rooms, with bells corresponding with the different apartments. Ah, diable. Bells, did you say? What do you mean? Oh, nothing. I only say they cost a load of money to hang, and what is the use of them, I should like to know. There used to be a dog let loose in the yard at night, but it has been taken to the house at Audiobook, to that you went to, you know. Yes. I was saying to him only yesterday, you are imprudent, Monsieur Count, for when you go to Audiobook and take your servants, the house is left unprotected. Well, said he, what next? Well, next, someday you will be robbed. What did he answer? He quietly said, what do I care if I am? Andrea, he has some secretaire with a spring. How do you know? Yes, which catches the thief in a trap and plays a tune. I was told there were such at the last exhibition. He has simply a mahogany secretaire in which the key is always kept, and he is not robbed. No, his servants are all devoted to him. There ought to be some money in that secretaire. There may be. No one knows what there is. And where is it? On the first floor. Sketch me the plan of that floor, as you have done of the ground floor, my boy. That is very simple. Andrea took the pen. On the first story, do you see, there is the anteroom and the drawing room. To the right of the drawing room, a library and a study. To the left, a bedroom and a dressing room. The famous secretaire is in the dressing room. Is there a window in the dressing room? 2, one here and one there. Andrea sketched 2 windows in the room which formed an angle on the plan and appeared as a small square added to the rectangle of the bedroom. Cadraus became thoughtful. Does he often go to Audiobook? Added he, 2 or 3 times a week. Tomorrow, for instance, he is going to spend the day and night there. Are you sure of it? He has invited me to dine there. There is a life for you, said Cadraus, a town house and a country house. That is what it is to be rich. And shall you dine there? Probably. When you dine there, do you sleep there? If I like, I am at home there. Cadraus looked at the young man as if to get at the truth from the bottom of his heart. But Andrea drew a cigar case from his pocket, took a Havana, quietly lit it and began smoking. When do you want your 1,200 francs? Said he to Cadraus. Now if you have them. Andrea took 25 louis from his pocket. Yellow boys. Said Cadraus, no, I thank you. Oh, you despise them. On the contrary, I esteem them but will not have them. You can change them, idiot. Gold is worth 5 sous. Exactly. And he who changes them will follow friend Cadraus, lay hands on him, and demand what farmers pay him their rent in gold. No nonsense, my good fellow. Silver simply, round coins with the head of some monarch or other on them. Anybody may possess a 5-franc piece, but do you suppose I carry 500 francs about with me? I should want a porter. Well, leave them with your porter, he is to be trusted. I will call for them, today. No, tomorrow, I shall not have time today. Well, tomorrow I will leave them when I go to Audiobook. May I depend on it? Certainly, because I shall secure my housekeeper on the strength of it. Now see here, will that be all? And will you not torment me any more? Never. Cadraus had become so gloomy that Andrea feared he should be obliged to notice the change. He redoubled his gaiety and carelessness. How sprightly you are, said Cadraus. One would say you were already in possession of your property. No, unfortunately, but when I do obtain it, well, I shall remember old friends, I can tell you that. Yes, since you have such a good memory. What do you want? It looks as if you were trying to fleece me. What an idea. Who am going to give you another piece of good advice. What is it? To leave behind you the diamond you have on your finger. We shall both get into trouble. You will ruin both yourself and me by your folly. How so? Said Andrea. How? You put on a livery, you disguise yourself as a servant, and yet keep a diamond on your finger worth 4 or 5,000 francs. You guess well. I know something of diamonds. I have had some. You do well to boast of it, said Andrea, who, without becoming angry, as Kadros feared at this new extortion, quietly resigned the ring. Kadros looked so closely at it that Andrea well knew that he was examining to see if all the edges were perfect. It is a false diamond, said Kadros. You are joking now, replied Andrea. Do not be angry, we can try it. Kadros went to the window, touched the glass with it, and found it would cut. Confidior, said Kadros, putting the diamond on his little finger. I was mistaken. But those thieves of jewelers imitate so well that it is no longer worthwhile to rob a jeweler's shop. It is another branch of industry paralyzed. Have you finished? Said Andrea, do you want anything more? Will you have my waistcoat or my hat? Make free now you have begun. No, you are, after all, a good companion. I will not detain you and will try to cure myself of my ambition. But take care, the same thing does not happen to you in selling the diamond you feared with the gold. I shall not sell it, do not fear. Not at least till the day after tomorrow, thought the young man. Happy rogue, said Kadros. You are going to find your servants, your horses, your carriage, and your betrothed. Yes, said Andrea. Well, I hope you will make a handsome wedding present the day you marry Mademoiselle Danglars. I have already told you it is a fancy you have taken in your head. What fortune has she? But I tell you 1,000,000. Andrea shrugged his shoulders. Let it be 1,000,000, said Kadros. You can never have so much as I wish you. Thank you, said the young man. Oh, I wish it you with all my heart, added Kadros with his hoarse laugh. Stop, let me show you the way. It is not worthwhile. Yes, it is. Why? Because there is a little secret, a precaution I thought it desirable to take, one of Huret and Fichet's locks, revised and improved by Gaspard Kadros. I will manufacture you a similar one when you are a capitalist. Thank you, said Andrea. I will let you know a week beforehand. They parted. Kadros remained on the landing until he had not only seen Andrea go down the 3 stories, but also cross the court. Then he returned hastily, shut his door carefully, and began to study, like a clever architect, the plan Andrea had left him. Dear Benedetto, said he, I think he will not be sorry to inherit his fortune, and he who hastens the day when he can touch his 500,000 will not be his worst friend.
Chapter 82.
The day following that on which the conversation we have related took place, the Count of Monte Cristo set out for Audiobook, accompanied by Ali and several attendants, and also taking with him some horses whose qualities he was desirous of ascertaining. He was induced to undertake this journey, of which the day before he had not even thought, and which had not occurred to Andrea either, by the arrival of Bertuccio from Normandy, with intelligence respecting the house and sloop. The house was ready, and the sloop which had arrived a week before lay at anchor in a small creek with her crew of 6 men, who had observed all the requisite formalities and were ready again to put to sea. The Count praised Bertuccio's zeal, and ordered him to prepare for a speedy departure, as his stay in France would not be prolonged more than a month. Now, said he, I may require to go in one night from Paris to Tr Port. Let 8 fresh horses be in readiness on the road, which will enable me to go 50 leagues in 10 hours. Your Highness had already expressed that wish, said Bertuccio, and the horses are ready. I have bought them and stationed them myself at the most desirable posts, that is, in villages where no one generally stops. That's well, said Monte Cristo. I remain here a day or two, arrange accordingly. As Bertuccio was leaving the room to give the requisite orders, Baptistin opened the door. He held a letter on a silver waiter. What are you doing here? Asked the Count, seeing him covered with dust. I did not send for you, I think. Baptistin, without answering, approached the Count and presented the letter. Important and urgent, said he. The Count opened the letter and read, M. de Monte Cristo is apprised that this night a man will enter his house in the Champs Élysées, with the intention of carrying off some papers supposed to be in the secretaire in the dressing room. The Countess' well-known courage will render unnecessary the aid of the police, whose interference might seriously affect him who sends this advice. The Count, by any opening from the bedroom or by concealing himself in the dressing room, would be able to defend his property himself. Many attendants or apparent precautions would prevent the villain from the attempt, and de Monte Cristo would lose the opportunity of discovering an enemy whom chance has revealed to him, who now sends this warning to the Count, a warning he might not be able to send another time, if this first attempt should fail and another be made. The Countess' first idea was that this was an artifice, a gross deception, to draw his attention from a minor danger in order to expose him to a greater. He was on the point of sending the letter to the commissary of police, notwithstanding the advice of his anonymous friend, or perhaps because of that advice, when suddenly the idea occurred to him that it might be some personal enemy, whom he alone should recognize and over whom, if such were the case, he alone would gain any advantage, as Fieso 17 had done over the Moor who would have killed him. We know the Countess' vigorous and daring mind, denying anything to be impossible, with that energy which marks the great man. From his past life, from his resolution to shrink from nothing, the Count had acquired an inconceivable relish for the contests in which he had engaged, sometimes against nature, that is to say, against God, and sometimes against the world, that is, against the devil. "They do not want my papers," said Monte Cristo. "They want to kill me. They are no robbers but assassins. I will not allow the prefect of police to interfere with my private affairs. I am rich enough, forsooth, to distribute his authority on this occasion." The Count recalled Baptistin, who had left the room after delivering the letter. "Return to Paris," said he. "Assemble the servants who remain there. I want all my household at Auteuil." "But will no one remain in the house, my lord?" asked Baptistin. "Yes, the porter." "My lord will remember that the lodge is at a distance from the house. Well, the house might be stripped without his hearing the least noise." "By whom? By thieves? You are a fool, M. Baptistin. Thieves might strip the house. It would annoy me less than to be disobeyed." Baptistin bowed. "You understand me," said the Count. "Bring your comrades here, one and all, but let everything remain as usual. Only close the shutters of the ground floor. And those of the first floor, you know they are never closed. Go." The Count signified his intention of dining alone, and that no one but Ali should attend him. Having dined with his usual tranquillity and moderation, the Count, making a signal to Ali to follow him, went out by the side gate, and on reaching the Bois de Boulogne turned, apparently without design, towards Paris, and at twilight found himself opposite his house in the Champs-Élysées. All was dark. One solitary, feeble light was burning in the porter's lodge, about 40 paces distant from the house, as Baptistin had said. Monte Cristo leaned against a tree, and with that scrutinizing glance which was so rarely deceived, looked up and down the avenue, examined the passers-by, and carefully looked down the neighboring streets, to see that no one was concealed. 10 minutes passed thus, and he was convinced that no one was watching him. He hastened to the side door with Ali, entered hurriedly, and by the servants' staircase, of which he had the key, gained his bedroom without opening or disarranging a single curtain, without even the porter having the slightest suspicion that the house, which he supposed empty, contained its chief occupant. Arrived in his bedroom, the Count motioned to Ali to stop. Then he passed into the dressing room, which he examined. Everything appeared as usual, the precious secretaire in its place, and the key in the secretaire. He double-locked it, took the key, returned to the bedroom door, removed the double staple of the bolt, and went in. Meanwhile Ali had procured the arms the Count required, namely, a short carbine and a pair of double-barreled pistols, with which as sure an aim might be taken as with a single-barreled one. Thus armed, The Count held the lives of 5 men in his hands. It was about 9:30. The Count and Ali ate in haste a crust of bread and drank a glass of Spanish wine. Then Monte Cristo slipped aside one of the movable panels, which enabled him to see into the adjoining room. He had within his reach his pistols and carbine, and Ali, standing near him, held one of the small Arabian hatchets, whose form has not varied since the Crusades. Through one of the windows of the bedroom, on a line with that in the dressing room, the Count could see into the street. 2 hours passed thus. It was intensely dark. Still Ali, thanks to his wild nature, and the Count, thanks doubtless to his long confinement, could distinguish in the darkness the slightest movement of the trees. The little light in the lodge had long been extinct. It might be expected that the attack, if indeed an attack was projected, would be made from the staircase of the ground floor, and not from a window. In Monte Cristo's opinion, the villains sought his life, not his money. It would be his bedroom they would attack, and they must reach it by the back staircase, or by the window in the dressing room. The clock of the invalid struck 11:45. The west wind bore on its moistened gusts the doleful vibration of the 3 strokes. As the last stroke died away, the Count thought he heard a slight noise in the dressing room. This first sound, or rather this first grinding, was followed by a second, then a third. At the 4th, the Count knew what to expect. A firm and well-practiced hand was engaged in cutting the 4 sides of a pane of glass with a diamond. The Count felt his heart beat more rapidly. Inured as men may be to danger, forewarned as they may be of peril, they understand, by the fluttering of the heart and the shuddering of the frame, the enormous difference between a dream and a reality, between the project and the execution. However, Monte Cristo only made a sign to apprise Ali, who, understanding that danger was approaching from the other side, drew nearer to his master. Monte Cristo was eager to ascertain the strength and number of his enemies. The window whence the noise proceeded was opposite the opening by which the Count could see into the dressing room. He fixed his eyes on that window. He distinguished a shadow in the darkness. Then one of the panes became quite opaque, as if a sheet of paper were stuck on the outside. Then the square cracked without falling. Through the opening an arm was passed to find the fastening, then a second. The window turned on its hinges and a man entered. He was alone. "That's a daring rascal," whispered the Count. At that moment Ali touched him slightly on the shoulder. He turned. Ali pointed to the window of the room in which they were, facing the street. "I see," said he. "There are 2 of them. One does the work while the other stands guard." He made a sign to Ali not to lose sight of the man in the street, and turned to the one in the dressing room. The glass cutter had entered and was feeling his way, his arms stretched out before him. At last he appeared to have made himself familiar with his surroundings. There were 2 doors. He bolted them both. When he drew near to the bedroom door, Monte Cristo expected that he was coming in and raised one of his pistols, but he simply heard the sound of the bolts sliding in their copper rings. It was only a precaution. The nocturnal visitor, ignorant of the fact that the Count had removed the staples, might now think himself at home and pursue his purpose with full security. Alone and free to act as he wished, the man then drew from his pocket something which the Count could not discern, placed it on a stand, then went straight to the secretaire, felt the lock, and contrary to his expectation, found that the key was missing. But the glass cutter was a prudent man who had provided for all emergencies. The Count soon heard the rattling of a bunch of skeleton keys, such as the locksmith brings when called to force a lock, and which thieves call nightingales, doubtless from the music of their nightly song when they grind against the bolt. "Ah, whispered Monte Cristo with a smile of disappointment. "He is only a thief." But the man in the dark could not find the right key. He reached the instrument he had placed on the stand, touched a spring, and immediately a pale light, just bright enough to render objects distinct, was reflected on his hands and countenance. By heavens, exclaimed Monte Cristo, starting back, it is Ali. Raised his hatchet. Dantès, stir, whispered Monte Cristo, and put down your hatchet. We shall require no arms. Then he added some words in a low tone, for the exclamation which surprise had drawn from the Count, faint as it had been, had startled the man who remained in the pose of the old knife grinder. It was an order the Count had just given, for immediately Ali went noiselessly and returned, bearing a black dress and a three-cornered hat. Meanwhile Monte Cristo had rapidly taken off his greatcoat, waistcoat, and shirt, and one might distinguish by the glimmering through the open panel that he wore a pliant tunic of steel mail, of which the last in France, where daggers are no longer dreaded, was worn by King Louis XVI, who feared the dagger at his breast, and whose head was cleft with a hatchet. The tunic soon disappeared under a long cassock, as did his hair under a priest's wig. The three-cornered hat over this effectually transformed the Count into an abbé. The man, hearing nothing more, stood erect, and while Monte Cristo was completing his disguise had advanced straight to the secretaire, whose lock was beginning to crack under his nightingale. Try again, whispered the Count, who depended on the secret spring which was unknown to the picklock. Clever as he might be, try again. You have a few minutes' work there. And he advanced to the window. The man whom he had seen seated on a fence had got down, and was still packing the street. But strange as it appeared, he cared not for those who might pass from the Avenue of the Champs-Élysées or by the Faubourg Saint-Honor. His attention was engrossed with what was passing at the Countess', and his only aim appeared to be to discern every movement in the dressing-room. Monte Cristo suddenly struck his finger on his forehead and a smile passed over his lips. Then drawing near to Ali, he whispered, "Remain here, concealed in the dark, and whatever noise you hear, whatever passes, only come in or show yourself if I call you." Ali bowed in token of strict obedience. Monte Cristo then drew a lighted taper from a closet, and when the thief was deeply engaged with his lock, silently opened the door, taking care that the light should shine directly on his face. The door opened so quietly that the thief heard no sound, but to his astonishment the room was suddenly illuminated. He turned. "Ah, good evening, my dear M. Cadraus," said Monte Cristo. "What are you doing here at such an hour?" "The Abbé Busoni," exclaimed Cadraus, and not knowing how this strange apparition could have entered when he had bolted the doors, he let fall his bunch of keys and remained motionless and stupefied. The Count placed himself between Cadraus and the window, thus cutting off from the thief his only chance of retreat. "The Abbé Busoni," repeated Cadraus, fixing his haggard gaze on the Count. "Yes, undoubtedly the Abbé Busoni himself," replied Monte Cristo, "and I am very glad you recognize me, dear M. Cadraus. It proves you have a good memory, for it must be about 10 years since we last met." This calmness of Busoni, combined with his irony and boldness, staggered Cadraus. The Abbé," murmured he, clenching his fists and his teeth chattering. "So you would rob the Count of Monte Cristo," continued the false Abbé. "Reverend sir," murmured Cadraus, seeking to regain the window, which the Count pitilessly blocked. "Reverend sir, I don't know, believe me, I take my oath, a pane of glass out," continued the Count, "a dark lantern, a bunch of false keys, a secretaire half forced." It is tolerably evident Cadraus was choking. He looked around for some corner to hide in, some way of escape. "Come, come," continued the Count, "I see you are still the same, an assassin. Reverend sir, since you know everything, you know it was not I, it was La Carconte. That was proved at the trial, since I was only condemned to the galleys. Is your time, then, expired, since I find you in a fair way to return there?" "No, reverend sir, I have been liberated by someone. That someone has done society a great kindness." "Ah," said Cadraus, "I had promised, and you are breaking your promise," interrupted Monte Cristo. "Alas, yes," said Cadraus very uneasily. "A bad relapse, that will lead you, if I mistake not, to the Place de Grv. So much the worse, diavolo." as they say in my country. Reverend sir, I am impelled. Every criminal says the same thing. Poverty pshaw, said Busoni disdainfully. Poverty may make a man beg, steal a loaf of bread at a baker's door, but not cause him to open a secretaire in a house supposed to be inhabited. And when the jeweler Johans had just paid you 45,000 francs for the diamond I had given you, and you killed him to get the diamond and the money both, was that also poverty? Pardon, reverend sir, said Kadrouse. You have saved my life once, save me again. That is but poor encouragement. Are you alone, reverend sir, or have you their soldiers ready to seize me? I am alone, said the abbé, and I will again have pity on you, and will let you escape, at the risk of the fresh miseries my weakness may lead to, if you tell me the truth. Ah, reverend sir, cried Kadrouse, clasping his hands and drawing nearer to Monte Cristo, I may indeed say you are my deliverer. You mean to say you have been freed from confinement? Yes, that is true, reverend sir. Who was your liberator? An Englishman. What was his name? Lord Wilmore. I know him. I shall know if you lie. Ah, reverend sir, I tell you the simple truth. Was this Englishman protecting you? No, not me, but a young Corsican, my companion. What was this young Corsican's name? Benedetto. Is that his Christian name? He had no other. He was a foundling. Then this young man escaped with you? He did. In what way? We were working at Saint Mandrier near Toulon. Do you know Saint Mandrier? I do. In the hour of rest, between noon and 1 o'clock, galley slaves having a nap after dinner, we may well pity the poor fellows, said the abbé. Nay, said Kadrouse, one can always work, one is not a dog. So much the better for the dogs, said Monte Cristo. While the rest slept, then, we went away a short distance. We severed our fetters with a file the Englishman had given us and swam away. And what is become of this Benedetto? I don't know. You ought to know. No, in truth, we parted at Hyères. And to give more weight to his protestation, Kadrouse advanced another step towards the abbé, who remained motionless in his place, as calm as ever, and pursuing his interrogation. You lie, said the abbé Busoni with a tone of irresistible authority. Reverend sir, you lie. This man is still your friend, and you, perhaps, make use of him as your accomplice. Oh, reverend sir, since you left Toulon, what have you lived on? Answer me, on what I could get. You lie, repeated the abbé a third time with a still more imperative tone. Kadrouse, terrified, looked at the count. You have lived on the money he has given you. True, said Kadrouse. Benedetto has become the son of a great lord. How can he be the son of a great lord? A natural son. And what is that great lord's name? The Count of Monte Cristo, the very same in whose house we are. Benedetto the Count's son, replied Monte Cristo, astonished in his turn. Well, I should think so, since the Count has found him a false father, since the Count gives him 4,000 francs a month, and leaves him 500,000 francs in his will. Ah, yes, said the factitious abbé, who began to understand. And what name does the young man bear meanwhile? Andrea Cavalcanti. Is it then that young man whom my friend the Count of Monte Cristo has received into his house, and who is going to marry Mademoiselle Danglars? Exactly. And you suffer that, you wretch. You who know his life and his crime. Why should I stand in a comrade's way? Said Kadrouse. You are right. It is not you who should apprise M. Danglars. It is I do not do so, reverend sir. Why not? Because you would bring us to ruin. And you think that to save such villains as you I will become an abettor of their plot, an accomplice in their crimes. Reverend sir, said Kadrouse, drawing still nearer, I will expose all. To whom? To M. Danglars, by heaven, cried Kadrouse, drawing from his waistcoat an open knife, and striking the Count in the breast. You shall disclose nothing, reverend sir. To Kadrouse's great astonishment, the knife, instead of piercing the Count's breast, flew back blunted. At the same moment, the Count seized with his left hand the assassin's wrist, and wrung it with such strength that the knife fell from his stiffened fingers, and Kadrous uttered a cry of pain. But the Count, disregarding his cry, continued to wring the bandit's wrist, until, his arm being dislocated, he fell first on his knees, then flat on the floor. The Count then placed his foot on his head, saying, "I know not what restrains me from crushing thy skull, rascal." "Ah, mercy, mercy!" cried Kadrous. The Count withdrew his foot. "Rise," said he. Kadrous rose. "What a wrist you have, reverend sir," said Kadrous, stroking his arm, all bruised by the fleshy pincers which had held it. "What a wrist!" "Silence. God gives me strength to overcome a wild beast like you. In the name of that God I act. Remember that wretch, and to spare thee at this moment is still serving him." "Oh," said Kadrous, groaning with pain, "take this pen and paper and write what I dictate." "I don't know how to write, reverend sir." "You lie, take this pen and write." Kadrous, awed by the superior power of the abbé, sat down and wrote, "Sir, the man whom you are receiving at your house, and to whom you intend to marry your daughter, is a felon who escaped with me from confinement at Toulon. He was no 59, and I know 58. He was called Benedetto, but he is ignorant of his real name, having never known his parents. Sign it," continued the Count. "But would you ruin me? If I sought your ruin, fool, I should drag you to the first guard house. Besides, when that note is delivered, in all probability you will have no more to fear. Sign it, then." Kadrous signed it. The address to Monsieur the Baron Danglars, banker, Rue de la Chaussée, Antin. Kadrous wrote the address. The abbé took the note. "Now," said he, "that suffices. Begone." "Which way?" "The way you came. You wished me to get out at that window. You got in very well." "Oh, you have some design against me, reverend sir." "Idiot! What design can I have?" "Why then not let me out by the door? What would be the advantage of waking the porter?" "Ah, reverend sir, tell me, do you wish me dead?" "I wish what God wills, but swear that you will not strike me as I go down." "Cowardly fool! What do you intend doing with me? I ask you, what can I do? I have tried to make you a happy man, and you have turned out a murderer." "Oh, monsieur," said Kadrous, "make one more attempt, try me once more." "I will," said the Count. "Listen, you know if I may be relied on." "Yes," said Kadrous. "If you arrive safely at home, what have I to fear except from you? If you reach your home safely, leave Paris, leave France, and wherever you may be, so long as you conduct yourself well, I will send you a small annuity. For if you return home safely, then, asked Kadrous, shuddering. "Then I shall believe God has forgiven you, and I will forgive you too." "As true as I am a Christian," stammered Kadrous, "you will make me die of fright." "Now begone," said the Count, pointing to the window. Kadrous, scarcely yet relying on this promise, put his legs out of the window and stood on the ladder. "Now go down," said the abbé, folding his arms. Understanding he had nothing more to fear from him, Kadrous began to go down. Then the Count brought the taper to the window, that it might be seen in the Champs-Élysées that a man was getting out of the window while another held a light. "What are you doing, reverend sir? Suppose a watchman should pass." And he blew out the light. He then descended, but it was only when he felt his foot touch the ground that he was satisfied of his safety. Monte Cristo returned to his bedroom, and glancing rapidly from the garden to the street, he saw first Kadrous, who, after walking to the end of the garden, fixed his ladder against the wall at a different part from where he came in. The Count then, looking over into the street, saw the man who appeared to be waiting run in the same direction, and place himself against the angle of the wall where Kadrous would come over. Kadrous climbed the ladder slowly, and looked over the coping to see if the street was quiet. No one could be seen or heard. The clock of the Invalides struck 1. Then Kadrous sat astride the coping, and drawing up his ladder passed it over the wall. Then he began to descend, or rather to slide down by the 2 stanchions, which he did with an ease which proved how accustomed he was to the exercise. But once started, he could not stop. In vain did he see a man start from the shadow when he was halfway down. In vain did he see an arm raised as he touched the ground. Before he could defend himself, that arm struck him so violently in the back that he let go the ladder, crying, "Help!" A second blow struck him almost immediately in the side, and he fell, calling, "Help, murder!" Then, as he rolled on the ground, his adversary seized him by the hair and struck him a third blow in the chest. This time Kadrouse endeavored to call again, but he could only utter a groan, and he shuddered as the blood flowed from his 3 wounds. The assassin, finding that he no longer cried out, lifted his head up by the hair. His eyes were closed and the mouth was distorted. The murderer, supposing him dead, let fall his head and disappeared. Then Kadrouse, feeling that he was leaving him, raised himself on his elbow and with a dying voice cried with great effort, "Murder! I am dying. Help, reverend sir, help!" This mournful appeal pierced the darkness. The door of the back staircase opened, then the side gate of the garden, and Ali and his master were on the spot with lights.
Chapter 83.
Kadrouse continued to call piteously, "Help, reverend sir, help!" "What is the matter?" asked Monte Cristo. "Help," cried Kadrouse, "I am murdered. We are here, take courage. Ah, it is all over. You are come too late, you are come to see me die. What blows, what blood!" He fainted. Ali and his master conveyed the wounded man into a room. Monte Cristo motioned to Ali to undress him, and he then examined his dreadful wounds. "My God!" he exclaimed, "thy vengeance is sometimes delayed, but only that it may fall the more effectually." Ali looked at his master for further instructions. "Bring here immediately the king's attorney, M. de Villefort, who lives in the Faubourg Saint-Honor. As you pass the lodge, wake the porter and send him for a surgeon." Ali obeyed, leaving the abbe alone with Kadrouse, who had not yet revived. When the wretched man again opened his eyes, the Count looked at him with a mournful expression of pity, and his lips moved as if in prayer. "A surgeon, reverend sir, a surgeon," said Kadrouse. "I have sent for one," replied the abbe. "I know he cannot save my life, but he may strengthen me to give my evidence." "Against whom?" "Against my murderer. Did you recognize him?" "Yes, it was Benedetto." "The young Corsican, himself your comrade?" "Yes, after giving me the plan of this house, doubtless hoping I should kill the Count and he thus become his heir, or that the Count would kill me and I should be out of his way, he waylaid me and has murdered me. I have also sent for the procureur. He will not come in time. I feel my life fast ebbing." "Wait a moment," said Monte Cristo. He left the room and returned in 5 minutes with a file. The dying man's eyes were all the time riveted on the door, through which he hoped succor would arrive. "Hasten, reverend sir, hasten. I shall faint again." Monte Cristo approached and dropped on his purple lips 3 or 4 drops of the contents of the phial. Kadrouse drew a deep breath. "Oh," said he, "that is life to me. More, more." "2 drops more would kill you," replied the abbe. "Oh, send for someone to whom I can denounce the wretch. Shall I write your deposition?" "You can sign it." "Yes, yes," said Kadrouse, and his eyes glistened at the thought of this posthumous revenge. Monte Cristo wrote, "I die, murdered by the Corsican Benedetto, my comrade in the galleys at Toulon, No. 59. "Quick, quick," said Kadrouse, "or I shall be unable to sign it." Monte Cristo gave the pen to Kadrouse, who collected all his strength, signed it, and fell back on his bed, saying, "You will relate all the rest, reverend sir. You will say he calls himself Andrea Cavalcanti. He lodges at the Hôtel des Princes. Oh, I am dying." He again fainted. The abbe made him smell the contents of the phial, and he again opened his eyes. His desire for revenge had not forsaken him. "Ah, you will tell all I have said, will you not, reverend sir?" "Yes, and much more." "What more will you say?" "I will say he had doubtless given you the plan of this house, in the hope the Count would kill you. I will say, likewise, he had apprised the Count by a note of your intention, and the Count being absent, I read the note and sat up to await you. And he will be guillotined, will he not?" said Kadrouse. "Promise me that, and I will die with that hope. I will say, Continued the Count, that he followed and watched you the whole time, and when he saw you leave the house, ran to the angle of the wall to conceal himself. Did you see all that? Remember my words. If you return home safely, I shall believe God has forgiven you, and I will forgive you also. And you did not warn me, cried Kadros, raising himself on his elbows. You knew I should be killed on leaving this house, and did not warn me. No, for I saw God's justice placed in the hands of Benedetto, and should have thought it sacrilege to oppose the designs of Providence. God's justice. Speak not of it, reverend sir. If God were just, you know how many would be punished who now escape. Patience, said the abbé in a tone which made the dying man shudder. Have patience. Kadros looked at him with amazement. Besides, said the abbé, God is merciful to all as he has been to you. He is first a father, then a judge. Do you then believe in God? Said Kadros. Had I been so unhappy as not to believe in him until now, said Monte Cristo, I must believe on seeing you. Kadros raised his clenched hands towards heaven. Listen, said the abbé, extending his hand over the wounded man, as if to command him to believe. This is what the God in whom, on your deathbed, you refuse to believe, has done for you. He gave you health, strength, regular employment, even friends, a life, in fact, which a man might enjoy with a calm conscience. Instead of improving these gifts, rarely granted so abundantly, this has been your course. You have given yourself up to sloth and drunkenness, and in a fit of intoxication have ruined your best friend. Help! Cried Kadros, I require a surgeon, not a priest. Perhaps I am not mortally wounded, I may not die. Perhaps they can yet save my life. Your wounds are so far mortal that, without the 3 drops I gave you, you would now be dead. Listen, then. Ah, murmured Kadros, what a strange priest you are. You drive the dying to despair instead of consoling them. Listen, continued the abbé. When you had betrayed your friend, God began not to strike but to warn you. Poverty overtook you. You had already passed half your life in coveting that which you might have honorably acquired, and already you contemplated crime under the excuse of want, when God worked a miracle in your behalf, sending you, by my hands, a fortune brilliant, indeed for you, who had never possessed any. But this unexpected, unhoped for, unheard of fortune sufficed you no longer when you once possessed it. You wished to double it, and how? By a murder. You succeeded, and then God snatched it from you and brought you to justice. It was not I who wished to kill the Jew, said Kadros. It was La Carconte. Yes, said Monte Cristo, and God I cannot say in justice, for his justice would have slain you, but God in his mercy spared your life. Pardieu. To transport me for life, how merciful! You thought it a mercy then, miserable wretch. The coward who feared death rejoiced at perpetual disgrace, for like all galley slaves, you said, I may escape from prison, I cannot from the grave. And you said truly, the way was opened for you unexpectedly. An Englishman visited Toulon, who had vowed to rescue 2 men from infamy, and his choice fell on you and your companion. You received a second fortune, money and tranquility were restored to you, and you, who had been condemned to a felon's life, might live as other men. Then, wretched creature, then you tempted God a 3rd time. I have not enough, you said, when you had more than you before possessed, and you committed a 3rd crime without reason, without excuse. God is wearied, he has punished you. Kadros was fast sinking. Give me drink, said he. I thirst, I burn. Monte Cristo gave him a glass of water. And yet that villain Benedetto will escape. No one, I tell you, will escape. Benedetto will be punished. Then you too will be punished, for you did not do your duty as a priest. You should have prevented Benedetto from killing me. I, said the Count, with a smile which petrified the dying man, when you had just broken your knife against the coat of mail which protected my breast. Yet perhaps if I had found you humble and penitent, I might have prevented Benedetto from killing you. But I found you proud and bloodthirsty, and I left you in the hands of God. I do not believe there is a God, howled Kadros. You do not believe it. You lie, you lie. Silence, said the abbé. You will force the last drop of blood from your veins. What? You do not believe in God when he is striking you dead. You will not believe in him, who requires but a prayer, a word, a tear, and he will forgive. God, who might have directed the assassin's dagger so as to end your career in a moment, has given you this quarter of an hour for repentance. Reflect then, wretched man, and repent. No, said Kadrouse, no, I will not repent. There is no God, there is no providence, all comes by chance. There is a providence. There is a God, said Monte Cristo, of whom you are a striking proof, as you lie in utter despair, denying him, while I stand before you, rich, happy, safe, and entreating that God in whom you endeavor not to believe, while in your heart you still believe in him. But who are you then? Asked Kadrouse, fixing his dying eyes on the Count. Look well at me, said Monte Cristo, putting the light near his face. Well, the Abbe Busoni. Monte Cristo took off the wig which disfigured him and let fall his black hair, which added so much to the beauty of his pallid features. Oh, said Kadrouse, thunderstruck, but for that black hair I should say you were the Englishman, Lord Wilmore. I am neither the Abbe Busoni nor Lord Wilmore, said Monte Cristo. Think again. Do you not recollect me? There was a magic effect in the Count's words, which once more revived the exhausted powers of the miserable man. Yes, indeed, said he. I think I have seen you and known you formerly. Yes, Kadrouse, you have seen me. You knew me once. Who then are you? And why, if you knew me, do you let me die? Because nothing can save you. Your wounds are mortal. Had it been possible to save you, I should have considered it another proof of God's mercy, and I would again have endeavored to restore you. I swear by my father's tomb. By your father's tomb, said Kadrouse, supported by a supernatural power, and half raising himself to see more distinctly the man who had just taken the oath which all men hold sacred. Who, then, are you? The Count had watched the approach of death. He knew this was the last struggle. He approached the dying man, and, leaning over him with a calm and melancholy look, he whispered, I am, and his almost closed lips uttered a name so low that the Count himself appeared afraid to hear it. Kadrouse, who had raised himself on his knees and stretched out his arm, tried to draw back, then clasping his hands, and raising them with a desperate effort, Oh, my God, said he, pardon me for having denied thee. Thou dost exist. Thou art indeed man's Father in heaven and his judge on earth. My God, my Lord, I have long despised thee. Pardon me, my God. Receive me, O my Lord. Kadrouse sighed deeply and fell back with a groan. The blood no longer flowed from his wounds. He was dead. One, said the Count mysteriously, his eyes fixed on the corpse, disfigured by so awful a death. 10 minutes afterwards the surgeon and the procureur arrived, the one accompanied by the porter, the other by Ali, and were received by the Abbe Busoni, who was praying by the side of the corpse.
Chapter 84.
The daring attempt to rob the Count was the topic of conversation throughout Paris for the next fortnight. The dying man had signed a deposition declaring Benedetto to be the assassin. The police had orders to make the strictest search for the murderer. Kadrouse's knife, dark lantern, bunch of keys and clothing, excepting the waistcoat which could not be found, were deposited at the registry. The corpse was conveyed to the morgue. The Count told everyone that this adventure had happened during his absence at Auteuil, and that he only knew what was related by the Abbe Busoni, who that evening, by mere chance, had requested to pass the night in his house, to examine some valuable books in his library. Bertuccio alone turned pale whenever Benedetto's name was mentioned in his presence, but there was no reason why anyone should notice his doing so. Villefort, being called on to prove the crime, was preparing his brief with the same ardor that he was accustomed to exercise when required to speak in criminal cases. But 3 weeks had already passed, and the most diligent search had been unsuccessful. The attempted robbery and the murder of the robber by his comrade were almost forgotten in anticipation of the approaching marriage of Mademoiselle Danglars to the Count Andrea Cavalcanti. It was expected that this wedding would shortly take place, as the young man was received at the banker S as the betrothed. Letters had been dispatched to M. Cavalcanti, as the Countess' father, who highly approved of the union, regretted his inability to leave Parma at that time, and promised a wedding gift of 150,000 livres. It was agreed that the 3 million should be entrusted to Danglars to invest. Some persons had warned the young man of the circumstances of his future father-in-law, who had of late sustained repeated losses. But with sublime disinterestedness and confidence, the young man refused to listen, or to express a single doubt to the Baron. The Baron adored Count Andrea Cavalcanti, not so Mademoiselle Eugenie Danglars. With an instinctive hatred of matrimony, she suffered Andrea's attentions in order to get rid of Morcerf. But when Andrea urged his suit, she betrayed an entire dislike to him. The Baron might possibly have perceived it, but, attributing it to a caprice, feigned ignorance. The delay demanded by Beauchamp had nearly expired. Morcerf appreciated the advice of Monte Cristo to let things die away of their own accord. No one had taken up the remark about the general, and no one had recognized in the officer who betrayed the castle of Yanina the noble count in the House of Peers. Albert, however, felt no less insulted. The few lines which had irritated him were certainly intended as an insult. Besides, the manner in which Beauchamp had closed the conference left a bitter recollection in his heart. He cherished the thought of the duel, hoping to conceal its true cause even from his seconds. Beauchamp had not been seen since the day he visited Albert, and those of whom the latter inquired always told him he was out on a journey which would detain him some days. Where he was no one knew. One morning Albert was awakened by his valet de chambre, who announced Beauchamp. Albert rubbed his eyes, ordered his servant to introduce him into the small smoking room on the ground floor, dressed himself quickly, and went down. He found Beauchamp packing the room. On perceiving him, Beauchamp stopped. "Your arrival here, without waiting my visit at your house today, looks well, sir," said Albert. "May I shake hands with you, saying, Beauchamp, acknowledge you have injured me and retain my friendship, or must I simply propose to you a choice of arms?" "Albert," said Beauchamp with a look of sorrow which stupefied the young man, "let us first sit down and talk." "Rather, sir, before we sit down I must demand your answer." "Albert," said the journalist, "these are questions which it is difficult to answer. I will facilitate it by repeating the question. Will you or will you not retract?" "Morcerf, it is not enough to answer yes or no to questions which concern the honor, the social interest, and the life of such a man as Lieutenant G.N. Raoul the Count of Morcerf, peer of France. What must then be done?" "What I have done, Albert. I reason thus: money, time, and fatigue are nothing compared with the reputation and interests of a whole family. Probabilities will not suffice. Only facts will justify a deadly combat with a friend. If I strike with the sword or discharge the contents of a pistol at man with whom, for 3 years, I have been on terms of intimacy, I must at least know why I do so. I must meet him with a heart at ease and that quiet conscience which a man needs when his own arm must save his life." "Well," said Morcerf impatiently, "what does all this mean?" "It means that I have just returned from Yanina." "From Yanina?" "Yes." "Impossible." "Here is my passport. Examine the visa: Geneva, Milan, Venice, Trieste, Delvino, Yanina. Will you believe the government of a republic, a kingdom, and an empire?" Albert cast his eyes on the passport, then raised them in astonishment to Beauchamp. "You have been to Yanina," said he. "Albert, had you been a stranger, a foreigner, a simple lord, like that Englishman who came to demand satisfaction 3 or 4 months since, and whom I killed to get rid of, I should not have taken this trouble. But I thought this mark of consideration due to you. I took a week to go, another to return, 4 days of quarantine and 48 hours to stay there. That makes 3 weeks. I returned last night and here I am. What circumlocution! how long you are before you tell me what I most wish to know. Because, in truth, Albert, you hesitate. Yes, I fear. You fear to acknowledge that your correspondent has deceived you. Oh, no self-love, Beauchamp. Acknowledge it, Beauchamp. Your courage cannot be doubted. Not so, murmured the journalist. On the contrary, Albert turned frightfully pale. He endeavored to speak, but the words died on his lips. My friend, said Beauchamp in the most affectionate tone, I should gladly make an apology, but alas! But what? The paragraph was correct, my friend. What? That French officer. Yes. Fernand. Yes. The traitor who surrendered the castle of the man in whose service he was. Pardon me, my friend, that man was your father. Albert advanced furiously towards Beauchamp, but the latter restrained him more by a mild look than by his extended hand. My friend, said he, here is a proof of it. Albert opened the paper. It was an attestation of 4 notable inhabitants of Yanina, proving that Colonel Fernand Mondego, in the service of Ali Tepelini, had surrendered the castle for 2,000,000 crowns. The signatures were perfectly legal. Albert tottered and fell overpowered in a chair. It could no longer be doubted. The family name was fully given. After a moment's mournful silence, his heart overflowed, and he gave way to a flood of tears. Beauchamp, who had watched with sincere pity the young man's paroxysm of grief, approached him. Now, Albert, said he, you understand me, do you not? I wish to see all, and to judge of everything for myself, hoping the explanation would be in your father's favor, and that I might do him justice. But on the contrary, the particulars which are given prove that Fernand Mondego, raised by Ali Pasha to the rank of Governor-General, is no other than Count Fernand of Morcerf. Then, recollecting the honor you had done me in admitting me to your friendship, I hastened to you. Albert, still extended on the chair, covered his face with both hands, as if to prevent the light from reaching him. I hastened to you, continued Beauchamp, to tell you, Albert, that in this changing age, the faults of a father cannot revert upon his children. Few have passed through this revolutionary period, in the midst of which we were born, without some stain of infamy or blood to soil the uniform of the soldier, or the gown of the magistrate. Now I have these proofs, Albert, and I am in your confidence. No human power can force me to a duel which your own conscience would reproach you with as criminal, but I come to offer you what you can no longer demand of me. Do you wish these proofs, these attestations which I alone possess, to be destroyed? Do you wish this frightful secret to remain with us? Confided to me, it shall never escape my lips. Say, Albert, my friend, do you wish it? Albert threw himself on Beauchamp's neck. Ah, noble fellow, cried he. Take these, said Beauchamp, presenting the papers to Albert. Albert seized them with a convulsive hand, tore them in pieces, and trembling lest the least vestige should escape and one day appear to confront him, he approached the waxlight, always kept burning for cigars, and burned every fragment. Dear, excellent friend, murmured Albert, still burning the papers. Let all be forgotten as a sorrowful dream, said Beauchamp. Let it vanish as the last sparks from the blackened paper, and disappear as the smoke from those silent ashes. Yes, yes, said Albert, and may there remain only the eternal friendship which I promised to my deliverer, which shall be transmitted to our children's children, and shall always remind me that I owe my life and the honor of my name to you. For had this been known, oh, Beauchamp, I should have destroyed myself. Or no, my poor mother. I could not have killed her by the same blow, I should have fled from my country. Dear Albert, said Beauchamp, but this sudden and factitious joy soon forsook the young man, and was succeeded by a still greater grief. Well, said Beauchamp, what still oppresses you, my friend? I am broken-hearted, said Albert. Listen, Beauchamp. I cannot thus, in a moment, relinquish the respect, the confidence, and pride with which a father's untarnished name inspires a son. Oh, Beauchamp, Beauchamp, how shall I now approach mine? Shall I draw back my forehead from his embrace, or withhold my hand from his? I am the most wretched of men. Ah, my mother, my poor mother. said Albert, gazing through his tears at his mother's portrait. If you know this, how much must you suffer? Come, said Beauchamp, taking both his hands, take courage, my friend. But how came that first note to be inserted in your journal? Some unknown enemy, an invisible foe, has done this. The more must you fortify yourself, Albert. Let no trace of emotion be visible on your countenance. Bear your grief as the cloud bears within it ruin and death, a fatal secret, known only when the storm bursts. Go, my friend, reserve your strength for the moment when the crash shall come. You think, then, all is not over yet, said Albert, horror-stricken. I think nothing, my friend, but all things are possible. By the way, what? Said Albert, seeing that Beauchamp hesitated. Are you going to marry Mademoiselle Danglars? Why do you ask me now? Because the rupture or fulfillment of this engagement is connected with the person of whom we were speaking. How? Said Albert, whose brow reddened. You think M. Danglars, I ask you only how your engagement stands. Pray put no construction on my words I do not mean they should convey, and give them no undue weight. No, said Albert, the engagement is broken off. Well, said Beauchamp. Then, seeing the young man was about to relapse into melancholy, let us go out, Albert, said he. A ride in the wood in the phaeton or on horseback will refresh you. We will then return to breakfast, and you shall attend to your affairs and I to mine. Willingly, said Albert, but let us walk. I think a little exertion would do me good. The two friends walked out on the fortress. When they arrived at the Madeleine, since we are out, said Beauchamp, let us call on M. de Monte Cristo. He is admirably adapted to revive one's spirits because he never interrogates, and in my opinion those who ask no questions are the best comforters. Gladly, said Albert, let us call. I love him.
Chapter 85.
Monte Cristo uttered a joyful exclamation on seeing the young men together. "Ah-ha," said he, "I hope all is over, explained and settled." "Yes," said Beauchamp, "the absurd reports have died away, and should they be renewed, I would be the first to oppose them, so let us speak no more of it." "Albert will tell you," replied the Count, "that I gave him the same advice. Look," added he, "I am finishing the most execrable morning's work." "What is it?" said Albert, "arranging your papers, apparently." "My papers, thank God, no. My papers are all in capital order because I have none. But M. Cavalcanti S.M. "Cavalcanti S.?" asked Beauchamp. "Yes. Do you not know that this is a young man whom the Count is introducing?" Said Morcerf. "Let us not misunderstand each other," replied Monte Cristo. "I introduce no one, and certainly not M. Cavalcanti." "And who," said Albert with a forced smile, "is to marry Mademoiselle Danglars instead of me, which grieves me cruelly." "What? Cavalcanti is going to marry Mademoiselle Danglars?" asked Beauchamp. "Certainly. Do you come from the end of the world?" Said Monte Cristo. "You, a journalist, the husband of renown. It is the talk of all Paris, and you, Count, have made this match." Asked Beauchamp. Silence, purveyor of gossip, do not spread that report." "I make a match. No, you do not know me. I have done all in my power to oppose it." "Ah, I understand," said Beauchamp, "on our friend Albert's account." "On my account," said the young man. "Oh no, indeed, the Count will do me the justice to assert that I have, on the contrary, always entreated him to break off my engagement, and happily it is ended. The Count pretends I have not him to thank. So be it, I will erect an altar Dio ignoto." "Listen," said Monte Cristo. "I have had little to do with it, for I am at variance both with the father-in-law and the young man. There is only Mademoiselle Huguenot, who appears but little charmed with the thoughts of matrimony, and who, seeing how little I was disposed to persuade her to renounce her dear liberty, retains any affection for me." "And do you say this wedding is at hand?" "Oh, yes, in spite of all I could say. I do not know the young man. He is said to be of good family and rich, but I never trust to vague assertions. I have warned M. Danglars of it till I am tired, but he is fascinated with his Lucanese. I have even informed him of a circumstance I consider very serious. The young man was either charmed by his nurse, stolen by gypsies, or lost by his tutor, I scarcely know which. But I do know his father lost sight of him for more than 10 years. What he did during these 10 years, God only knows. Well, all that was useless. They have commissioned me to write to the major to demand papers, and here they are. I send them but like Pilate washing my hands. And what does Mademoiselle Armely say to you for robbing her of her pupil? Oh, well, I don't know, but I understand that she is going to Italy. Madame Danglars asked me for letters of recommendation for the impresarii. I gave her a few lines for the director of the Val Theatre, who is under some obligation to me. But what is the matter, Albert? You look dull. Are you, after all, unconsciously in love with Mademoiselle Huguenot? I am not aware of it, said Albert, smiling sorrowfully. Beauchamp turned to look at some paintings, but continued Monte Cristo, you are not in your usual spirits. I have a dreadful headache, said Albert. Well, my dear Viscount, said Monte Cristo, I have an infallible remedy to propose to you. What is that? Asked the young man. A change, indeed. Said Albert, yes, and as I am just now excessively annoyed, I shall go from home. Shall we go together? You annoyed, Count, said Beauchamp, and by what? Ah, you think very lightly of it. I should like to see you with a brief preparing in your house. What brief? The one M. de Villefort is preparing against my amiable assassin. Some brigand escaped from the gallows, apparently. True, said Beauchamp, I saw it in the paper. Who is this Cadrouse? Some proven Al, it appears. M. de Villefort heard of him at Marseille, and M. Danglars recollects having seen him. Consequently, the procureur is very active in the affair, and the prefect of police very much interested. And thanks to that interest, for which I am very grateful, they send me all the robbers of Paris and the neighborhood, under pretense of their being Cadrouse's murderers, so that in 3 months, if this continues, every robber and assassin in France will have the plan of my house at his fingers' ends. I am resolved to desert them and go to some remote corner of the earth, and shall be happy if you will accompany me, Viscount. Willingly. Then it is settled. Yes, but where? I have told you, where the air is pure, where every sound soothes, where one is sure to be humbled, however proud may be his nature. I love that humiliation, I, who am master of the universe, as was Augustus. But where are you really going? To sea, Viscount, you know I am a sailor. I was rocked when an infant in the arms of old Ocean and on the bosom of the beautiful Amphitrite. I have sported with the green mantle of the one and the azure robe of the other. I love the sea as a mistress, and pine if I do not often see her. Let us go, Count, to sea. Yes, you accept my proposal. I do. Well, Viscount, there will be in my courtyard this evening a good traveling britska, with 4 post-horses, in which one may rest as in a bed. M. Beauchamp, it holds 4 very well. Will you accompany us? Thank you, I have just returned from sea. What? You have been to sea? Yes, I have just made a little excursion to the Borromean Islands 18. What of that? Come with us, said Albert. No, dear Morcerf. You know I only refuse when the thing is impossible. Besides, it is important, added he in a low tone, that I should remain in Paris just now to watch the paper. Ah, you are a good and an excellent friend, said Albert. Yes, you are right. Watch, Beauchamp, and try to discover the enemy who made this disclosure. Albert and Beauchamp parted, the last pressure of their hands expressing what their tongues could not before a stranger. Beauchamp is a worthy fellow, said Monte Cristo when the journalist was gone. Is he not, Albert? Yes, and a sincere friend. I love him devotedly. But now we are alone, although it is immaterial to me. Where are we going? Into Normandy, if you like. Delightful. Shall we be quite retired? Have no society, no neighbors. Our companions will be riding horses, dogs to hunt with, and a fishing boat. Exactly what I wish for. I will apprise my mother of my intention and return to you. But shall you be allowed to go into Normandy? I may go where I please. Yes, I am aware you may go alone, since I once met you in Italy but to accompany the mysterious Monte Cristo. You forget, Count, that I have often told you of the deep interest my mother takes in you. Woman is fickle, said Francis I. Woman is like a wave of the sea, said Shakespeare. Both the great king and the great poet ought to have known woman's nature well. Woman's, yes. My mother is not woman, but a woman. As I am only a humble foreigner, you must pardon me if I do not understand all the subtle refinements of your language. What I mean to say is that my mother is not quick to give her confidence, but when she does, she never changes. Ah, yes, indeed, said Monte Cristo with a sigh. And do you think she is in the least interested in me? I repeat it, you must really be a very strange and superior man, for my mother is so absorbed by the interest you have excited that when I am with her she speaks of no one else. And does she try to make you dislike me? On the contrary, she often says, Morcerf, I believe the Count has a noble nature. Try to gain his esteem. Indeed, said Monte Cristo, sighing. You see then, said Albert, that instead of opposing, she will encourage me. Adieu then until 5 o'clock. Be punctual, and we shall arrive at 12 or 1. At Tr Port. Yes, or in the neighborhood. But can we travel 48 leagues in 8 hours? Easily, said Monte Cristo. You are certainly a prodigy. You will soon not only surpass the railway, which would not be very difficult in France, but even the telegraph. But, Viscount, since we cannot perform the journey in less than 7 or 8 hours, do not keep me waiting. Do not fear, I have little to prepare. Monte Cristo smiled as he nodded to Albert, then remained a moment absorbed in deep meditation. But passing his hand across his forehead, as if to dispel his reverie, he rang the bell twice and Bertuccio entered. Bertuccio, said he, I intend going this evening to Normandy instead of tomorrow or the next day. You will have sufficient time before 5 o'clock. Dispatch a messenger to apprise the grooms at the first station. M. de Morcerf will accompany me. Bertuccio obeyed and dispatched a courier to Pontoise to say the traveling carriage would arrive at 6 o'clock. From Pontoise, another express was sent to the next stage, and in 6 hours all the horses stationed on the road were ready. Before his departure, the Count went ahead E.'s apartments, told her his intention, and resigned everything to her care. Albert was punctual. The journey soon became interesting from its rapidity, of which Morcerf had formed no previous idea. Truly, said Monte Cristo, with your post-horses going at the rate of 2 leagues an hour, and that absurd law that one traveler shall not pass another without permission, so that an invalid or ill-tempered traveler may detain those who are well and active, it is impossible to move. I escape this annoyance by traveling with my own postilion and horses. Do I not, Ali? The Count put his head out of the window and whistled, and the horses appeared to fly. The carriage rolled with a thundering noise over the pavement, and everyone turned to notice the dazzling meteor. Ali, smiling, repeated the sound, grasped the reins with a firm hand and spurred his horses, whose beautiful manes floated in the breeze. This child of the desert was in his element, and with his black face and sparkling eyes appeared, in the cloud of dust he raised, like the genius of the simoom and the god of the hurricane. I never knew till now the delight of speed, said Morcerf, and the last cloud disappeared from his brow. But where the devil do you get such horses? Are they made to order? Precisely, said the Count. 6 years since I bought a horse in Hungary remarkable for its swiftness. The 32 that we shall use tonight are its progeny. They are all entirely black, with the exception of a star upon the forehead. That is perfectly admirable. But what do you do, Count, with all these horses? You see, I travel with them. But you are not always traveling. When I no longer require them, Bertuccio will sell them, and he expects to realize 30 or 40,000 francs by the sale. But no monarch in Europe will be wealthy enough to purchase them. Then he will sell them to some Eastern vizier, who will empty his coffers to purchase them, and refill them by applying the bastinado to his subjects. Count, May I suggest one idea to you? Certainly. It is that next to you, Bertuccio must be the richest gentleman in Europe. You are mistaken, Viscount. I believe he has not a franc in his possession. Then he must be a wonder. My dear Count, if you tell me many more marvelous things, I warn you I shall not believe them. I countenance nothing that is marvelous, M. Albert. Tell me, why does a steward rob his master? Because, I suppose, it is his nature to do so for the love of robbing. You are mistaken. It is because he has a wife and family and ambitious desires for himself in them. Also because he is not sure of always retaining his situation and wishes to provide for the future. Now, M. Bertuccio is alone in the world. He uses my property without accounting for the use he makes of it. He is sure never to leave my service. Why? Because I should never get a better. Probabilities are deceptive. But I deal in certainties. He is the best servant over whom one has the power of life and death. Do you possess that right over Bertuccio? Yes. There are words which close a conversation with an iron door. Such was the Countess' yes. The whole journey was performed with equal rapidity. The 32 horses, dispersed over 7 stages, brought them to their destination in 8 hours. At midnight they arrived at the gate of a beautiful park. The porter was in attendance. He had been apprised by the groom of the last stage of the Countess' approach. At 2:30 in the morning, Morcerf was conducted to his apartments, where a bath and supper were prepared. The servant who had traveled at the back of the carriage waited on him. Baptistin, who rode in front, attended the Count. Albert bathed, took his supper, and went to bed. All night he was lulled by the melancholy noise of the surf. On rising, he went to his window, which opened on a terrace, having the sea in front, and at the back a pretty park bounded by a small forest. In a creek lay a little sloop, with a narrow keel and high masts, bearing on its flag the Monte Cristo arms, which were a mountain, or on a sea azure, with a cross gules in chief, which might be an allusion to his name that recalled Calvary, the mount rendered by our Lord's passion more precious than gold, and to the degrading cross which his blood had rendered holy. Or it might be some personal remembrance of suffering and regeneration buried in the night of this mysterious personage's past life. Around the schooner lay a number of small fishing boats belonging to the fishermen of the neighboring village, like humble subjects awaiting orders from their queen. There, as in every spot where Monte Cristo stopped, if but for 2 days, luxury abounded and life went on with the utmost ease. Albert found in his anteroom 2 guns, with all the accoutrements for hunting, a lofty room on the ground floor containing all the ingenious instruments the English eminent in piscatory pursuits, since they are patient and sluggish, have invented for fishing. The day passed in pursuing those exercises in which Monte Cristo excelled. They killed a dozen pheasants in the park, as many trout in the stream, dined in a summer house overlooking the ocean, and took tea in the library. Towards the evening of the 3rd day, Albert, completely exhausted with the exercise which invigorated Monte Cristo, was sleeping in an armchair near the window, while the Count was designing with his architect the plan of a conservatory in his house, when the sound of a horse at full speed on the high road made Albert look up. He was disagreeably surprised to see his own valet de chambre, whom he had not brought, that he might not inconvenience Monte Cristo. "Florentin here," cried he, starting up. "Is my mother ill?" And he hastened to the door. Monte Cristo watched and saw him approach the valet, who drew a small sealed parcel from his pocket, containing a newspaper and a letter. "From whom is this?" said he eagerly. "From M. Beauchamp," replied Florentin. "Did he send you?" "Yes, sir. He sent for me to his house, gave me money for my journey, procured a horse, and made me promise not to stop till I had reached you. I have come in 15 hours. Albert opened the letter with fear, uttered a shriek on reading the first line, and seized the paper. His sight was dimmed, his legs sank under him, and he would have fallen had not Florentin supported him. "Poor young man," said Monte Cristo in a low voice. It is then true that the sin of the father shall fall on the children to the third and fourth generation. Meanwhile Albert had revived, and, continuing to read, he threw back his head, saying, "Florentin, is your horse fit to return immediately? It is a poor, lame post-horse. In what state was the house when you left?" All was quiet, but on returning from M. Beauchamp's, I found Madame in tears. She had sent for me to know when you would return. I told her my orders from M. Beauchamp. She first extended her arms to prevent me, but after a moment's reflection, "Yes, go, Florentin," said she, "and may he come quickly." "Yes, my mother," said Albert, "I will return, and woe to the infamous wretch. But first of all I must get there." He went back to the room where he had left Monte Cristo. 5 minutes had sufficed to make a complete transformation in his appearance. His voice had become rough and hoarse. His face was furrowed with wrinkles. His eyes burned under the blue-veined lids, and he tottered like a drunken man. "Count," said he, "I thank you for your hospitality, which I would gladly have enjoyed longer, but I must return to Paris. What has happened? A great misfortune, more important to me than life." Dantès questioned me. "I beg of you, but lend me a horse. My stables are at your command, Viscount, but you will kill yourself by riding on horseback. Take a postchaise or a carriage." "No, it would delay me, and I need the fatigue you warned me of. It will do me good." Albert reeled as if he had been shot and fell on a chair near the door. Monte Cristo did not see this second manifestation of physical exhaustion. He was at the window, calling, "Ali, a horse for M. de Morcerf, quick, he is in a hurry." These words restored Albert. He darted from the room, followed by the Count. "Thank you," cried he, throwing himself on his horse. "Return as soon as you can, Florentin." "Must I use any password to procure a horse?" "Only dismount. Another will be immediately saddled." Albert hesitated a moment. "You may think my departure strange and foolish," said the young man. "You do not know how a paragraph in a newspaper may exasperate one. Read that," said he, "when I am gone, that you may not be witness of my anger." While the Count picked up the paper, he put spurs to his horse, which leaped in astonishment at such an unusual stimulus, and shot away with the rapidity of an arrow. The Count watched him with a feeling of compassion, and when he had completely disappeared, read as follows: "The French officer in the service of Ali Pasha of Yanina alluded to 3 weeks since in El Impartial, who not only surrendered the castle of Yanina, but sold his benefactor to the Turks, styled himself truly at that time Fernand, as our esteemed contemporary states, but he has since added to his Christian name a title of nobility and a family name. He now calls himself the Count of Morcerf, and ranks among the peers." Thus the terrible secret, which Beauchamp had so generously destroyed, appeared again like an armed phantom, and another paper, deriving its information from some malicious source, had published 2 days after Albert's departure for Normandy the few lines which had rendered the unfortunate young man almost crazy.
Will the weight of secrets shatter the soul, or will courage rise to meet the shadows? Can hope endure in a world cloaked in deception and despair? Discover the answers in next week's chapter. Join us Tuesday on Raining Book. Subscribe and tap the bell to follow every heart-pounding twist of fate and resilience. Tell us below, whose journey captivates you most? The steadfast hero forging a path through chaos, the enigmatic figure pulling strings from the shadows, or the quiet souls seeking light amidst darkness? Every like, comment, or share fuels our mission to bring stories as gripping and unforgettable as Dumas' masterpiece. Until then, keep your imagination alive for whispered plots and grand revelations. Happy listening.